or anonymous or something.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our virtual candidate forum. I'm Nancy Lockwood, co-president of the League of Women Voters of Laramie. I would like to thank our Albany County Public Library for co-sponsoring our candidate forums, particularly Library Director Rachel Crocker, who has assisted us with the Zoom platform for tonight's program. Tonight's forum is for the Laramie City Council candidates. There are 4 candidates running for 2 positions in Ward 1, 4 candidates running for 2 positions in Ward 2, and 2 candidates running for 1 position in Ward 3. Tim Hale is a Ward 2 candidate, and he is unable to participate, but has provided a statement that will be read before we begin our questions tonight. And Sharon Cumbay also is unable to attend. She is running for a seat in Ward 2 as well, and she has also provided a statement, and that also will be read. We are recording tonight's forum and posting it on our YouTube channel, League of Women Voters of Wyoming, within the next few days. Links to all the forum recordings can also be found on our website, and we hope to have them posted on Vote 411's website. Laramie's public access TV station, Channel 199, will also air the forums. Web addresses and links will be provided at the conclusion of the forum. Oops, and I'm covering the camera, sorry. The general election is Tuesday, November 3. Absentee voting has already begun. You can request an absentee ballot from your county clerk's office now through November 2. Your completed ballot needs to be returned to the county clerk's office such that it is received by November 3, 7 p.m. Of course, you can also vote at your polling place on the day of the election, and polling places are open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You may also register or change your registration now through October 19 at the clerk's office. After October 19 through November 2, you can register or change your registration at the clerk's office if you are also casting an absentee ballot at the same time. And you can register or change your registration at the polling places on election day. If you have any special needs, voting accommodations and aids are available at each polling place and at the clerk's office. You can contact your clerk's office to arrange in advance for assistance, and the election judges can assist you at the polls. Polling places have been consolidated for this election due to COVID-19. There are 4 polling places within the city limits and 2 polling places outside the city limits. If you are a registered voter in Albany County, you should have received a postcard in the mail this summer if your polling place had changed due to the consolidation. You can also contact the clerk's office to go to their website and find your polling place location there. On October 11, the Laramie Boomerang will publish the League's Voters Guide. The League will also post the Voters Guide on their website, and there will be copies available at the county clerk's office, the Albany County Public Library, as well as other locations in town. And it's also now posted, I think, on Vote 411's website. If you are interested in knowing more about the League of Women Voters or becoming a member, please visit our website or Facebook page. For this forum, our moderator will provide questions to the candidates. The League has chosen questions from those provided to us by local citizens. The questions are specific to the office of City Council, not towards individual candidates or towards individual wards. The moderator will ask all candidates in this forum the same questions. Questions were not provided to the candidates in advance of tonight's forum. Responses to the questions are limited to 75 seconds. Candidates, we ask that you wait to begin your response until you are on speaker view and spotlighted, and that you mute yourself when not speaking. Also, please provide your name before beginning your response. The moderator will have the discretion to edit questions for clarity and appropriateness, to ask follow-up questions, to help expand upon an issue, to cover unaddressed issues, and to elicit responses that will assist voters in distinguishing one candidate from another in relation to issues. All candidates will be given time to respond to any follow-up questions. The moderator may also vary the allowed response time based on the complexity of the question and overall time constraints of the forum. At the conclusion of the forum, we will display by screen share a list of the candidates and their contact information so you can connect with them for further information. We will also display information for accessing the recorded forums and contact information for the League and Albany County Public Library and other governmental offices associated with elections. And now I'm going to turn things over to our moderator tonight, Rob Godbee. Rob currently serves as the Associate Dean of the Haub School of Environment and Natural Resources at the University of Wyoming. He is also the Deputy Director of the Center for Energy Regulation and Policy Analysis and an Associate Professor in the Economics Department at UW. Additionally, he also serves as Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative Faculty Fellow and is an adjunct faculty member with the MBA program. And this one, you're going to give me the pronunciation again.
That's Pforzheim, Germany. Yeah.
Pforzheim University in Germany. By the time I have you here often enough, I'll have got that one down, Rob. In addition to his academic duties, he was appointed to serve on the State of Wyoming Census Revenue Estimating Group in 2019. His research areas include natural resource energy and environmental economics, industrial organization and macro policy, and he is often interviewed by the national and international media in energy and macroeconomic issues. Outside of work, Rob enjoys being walked by his dogs. He has also served as a moderator during our primary election forums this year, and the League is very pleased to have Rob return again for the general election. So welcome, Rob.
Thanks, Nancy. And tonight, hopefully we won't need some of that background. This is the City Council debate, so we won't necessarily need to talk about state and national issues. So welcome everybody and thank you for coming. So first we're going to start with each candidate just stating their name and the seat that they're running for. But before we do that, we will hear the statements read by Nancy Lockwood from our two absentee candidates.
I will start with Mr. Hale's statement. This is from Tim Hale. He says, in approximately 40 years as a small business owner in Laramie, I have learned to listen to what the customer desires. As a city councilor, the customer is the constituent. I've heard from constituents that Laramie needs, and he's enumerated these. 1, a council that listens to citizen concerns and opinions. After listening, a council that will act on the concerns of the citizens rather than act only on the city administration's wishes. 2, a council that supports pro-business policies. This includes fewer and less drastic policies for improving existing businesses or new development. 3, a council that recognizes that this has been a hard year for local business owners, as well as on city finances. A moratorium on the ever-increasing water rates and on building fee increases is necessary. 4, a council that thinks on its own rather than a council that only supports administration's increasing ordinances and regulations. The citizens need true representation of the voters over the desires of a tyrannical management. Granting the city manager a raise nearly every year with no public input on those raises only indicates how much authority the council has abandoned. 5, a council that will finally improve the existing city infrastructure rather than just building new infrastructure. Currently, the tail that is the city administration wags the dog that is the city council. The city council needs to lead and take charge of representing the citizens instead of allowing city government to grow larger and larger. So that is from Tim Hale, who is a candidate for Ward 2. And next we're going to hear from Sharon Cumby. She also is a candidate in Ward 2. I'm sorry I cannot be with you tonight. I'm not feeling well. Nancy Lockwood has agreed to read a statement, and I am grateful. For 22 years, Laramie has been my home and the place where I feel I belong. I love the people, the lifestyle, and the opportunity to be a part of a close-knit community. My work with community organizations led to my attending city council meetings on a more regular basis. Having become more familiar with the process, I believe I have a skill set that will be a useful contribution to City Council governance. Some of my strengths include written and verbal communication, listening, and group process skills. I am an experienced and proven problem solver. I have a track record of working with individuals and groups in crises. I listen, communicate, and then help make decisions for solutions that are based on facts and the best outcomes for the community. I will work for clean water and aquifer protection, improvement of current recycling, environmental sustainability, support local business and entrepreneurs, community respect and kindness. I am ready to serve Laramie on City Council Ward 2, and I'm asking for your vote.
Great. Thanks, Nancy. So what we'll do tonight to start is just ask each of you to state your name and the seat you're running for. We won't take any other statements at this time. We'll jump into the first questions, and at that point you can actually make the statements in response to questions. So I will start with the order on my screen. Hopefully I can see everybody. If I do miss someone, because we're in a spotlight view, I can't see all of you at once. But if I do miss somebody, please raise your hand, make noise, do whatever that it takes to get my attention, and I will try to recognize you. Just before we get started, a couple reminders. Once we've had everybody state their name and their seat, once you're asked questions, please respond with your name first so that people listening understand and know who's speaking. And I will try to randomize who starts and who finishes with each set of questions. So I'll ask you each the same question, and I'll start with a new person each time. And hopefully we will do that fairly so that we don't end up starting with too many people answering first, or too many people answering last. So I'll do my best. All right, so let's start with each of you stating your name and the seat you're running for, starting with you, Caleb.
Thank you so much. I'm Caleb Hine. I'm running for Ward 1, and that encompasses all the way up to 9th Street with West Laramie.
Great, thank you. Mark.
Yes, Mark Andrews. I'm running for City Council Ward 2, so a little bit west of Caleb.
Great, thank you, Mark. Brian.
Brian Harrington, Laramie City Council, Ward 1.
Great, thanks, Brian. And Jane?
Hi, this is Jane Pierce, Laramie City Council, Ward 2.
Great, thanks, Jane. Brett?
Hello, my name is Brett Glass, and I am running to represent City Council Ward 1.
Thanks, Brett. Andy?
Hi, everyone. Andy Somerville, and I'm running to represent Ward 1 for the Laramie City Council.
Great. And just to make sure I didn't miss, did I miss anybody? Good. First success of the night. All right. Well, thanks everybody for being here. I'm going to start with an easy question for each of you. I'm going to ask you each, starting with you, Brian. What motivates you to run, and what makes you especially suited for your office, or for the office, I should say, that you're running for?
Thank you, Rob. When I was growing up in northern Wyoming, it was really, I grew up in a really small town that didn't have an awful lot to provide young people for opportunity. In 2010, I moved to Laramie and started my first business with a small loan that my parents gave me that I later learned was actually just against the equity on my childhood home. So, I really knew there was going to be no second chance. And as I got started in business, I feel abundantly fortunate that I did it in Laramie, because I found this network that was able to provide me support. And I always felt like that was really just a lucky situation. So 2 years ago, when I ran for my first term on council, I really ask for the support of Ward 1 to bring more equity to that situation, to really figure out a way to bring those opportunities to everyone. So what has me coming back for a second run at council to serve a second term is really just an interest in continuing the work of my first term. I mean, we accomplished as a council a significant amount in the last 2 years, but in no small way is that, that's not going to be a very significant thing if we stop here. So I want to continue to build on the efforts of my first term and look forward to the future. I know right now it's really pretty hard to think about the future as we're sort of in the middle of a halted economy and a recovery from a pandemic that seems to be getting worse each day. So, I think in that moment, we really do need to be considering what this looks like as we rebuild, because this could be an opportunity if we're smart enough to take it.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Let me go next to Jane. Jane, what motivates you to run and makes you especially suited for the office?
Okay, hi everybody, this is Jane Pierce. What motivates me to run is that there is more work to do. And I'm looking forward to continuing to do some of that good work on City Council. And what makes me uniquely qualified, I've been doing it for a couple of years now. This is the end of my second term, and I think we've got a real good reason right now to have some strong experience on council.
Great, thanks, Jane. Brett, I'll go to you next. Again, what motivates you to run and what makes you especially suited for the office?
Thank you. My name is Brett Glass. I'm running for City Council in Ward 1, and I am running for council because I love our city and I want to give back by helping to steer it through what is sure to be a difficult period ahead. We have all sorts of problems to solve, everything from problems related to the COVID-19 pandemic to more mundane ones such as parking, business development, economic diversity, town versus gown issues, zoning, all sorts of problems. And well, I feel that I'm up to the task. I'm a business owner. I own 2 businesses in Laramie. And you have to be a good judge of people in order to run businesses. And I also have a head for numbers. I'm an electrical engineer, and so I have a good sense for when numbers don't add up, and that's going to be very important because we need to be very careful with our money. The city is going to have less tax revenue in the coming months, in the coming years, and we'll need to account for everything carefully. In general, we need to expect more accountability from the city staff, and I'm prepared to help do that and then help to manage the city better.
Great, thanks very much, Brett. Caleb, we'll go to you next. What makes you especially suited for this office and what motivates you to run?
Hello, thank you. This is Caleb Hine for Ward 1, and growing up in Laramie, I was honored and privileged to work alongside many businessmen, and including my father, to really see firsthand how the city government can both help or hinder the development of the city. So I guess that's what I have to offer. I also ran my own business and I'm involved in the trades. So I have that to offer. The major reason that I'm running is safety for the community, both in this COVID as well as police protection. And also we got to get back to where we're looking at the true numbers and balancing our budget. I also have a really large focus on the business sector, as I want to promote more businesses, and I feel as though it's really important to make unbiased, fact-based decisions on and doing your own research, not just relying on something you're just told. So.
Great, thanks very much, Caleb. Next, we'll go to Andy. Andy Somerville. So what motivates you to run, and what makes you especially suited for office?
Well, thank you, Robin. I'm happy to be here tonight. I think Laramie for me is just a deep love. I was a college student at UW who forgot to leave, and that was about 22 years ago. My family, my husband and I have three children, three girls that we're raising here, and I just couldn't imagine living them anywhere else. So I just have a very, very deep love for this community. And want to do what I can in terms of trying to keep the community together and focused and moving in a good direction as we all work through the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the things that I learned during my previous experience on council is just the tremendous resources that we have here in Laramie, both in personnel, in programs, and just in general community members. And I think that with all the bad that's come with COVID-19, we have to recognize the opportunity to re-envision our community and really re-envision that future and bring those resources and those partnerships to the table. I hope that my prior experience and my knowledge of state and federal regulations can help build us to a stronger, better future for Laramie when we get on the other side of this.
Great, thanks very much, Andy. And last but not least, Mark Andrews. Can you please tell us what motivates you to run and what makes you especially suited for office?
I need to make a correction. I'm actually to the east of Caleb, not to the west. Was basically the national unrest that happened in the last 3 months, and I saw that spill into Laramie, Wyoming, which has been home for me and my daughter in the last 12 years. And I've come from Pennsylvania, small town atmosphere, and Laramie really attracted me to raise a child out here. This would be my first office in any kind of governmental institution. Professionally, I'm an environmental manager. I was studied at Penn State University, graduated in '92 with environmental science degree. So I have that kind of background, regulatory, either federal or state permitting, things like that, and tracking environmental issues that face industry. I've been doing for 27 years. This is kind of new to me, and I thought I'd, put my hat in, see what I could do to taking problems in the sense of not just, what the headlines are, but what's really behind some of the issues and some of the decisions being made for the city of Laramie.
Great, thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
I think we had a little bit of trouble there with your internet connection, I think, but your message came through clearly. So we were able to hear everything you said. There was just a couple stutters, so we gave a few extra seconds there so that you could finish your statement. So as moderator, I am given the decision of whether to give you extra time for a question. So we're now going to test our timekeeper tonight. So this question, instead of 75 seconds, I will give you 90 seconds to respond. So this is a little more complicated, but it's also a positive question. So what I'm going to ask you is what you see as the top 3 strengths of the city, and how can we use those strengths to benefit the city? And I will start with you, Jane.
Hi, everybody. Jane Pierce here. Of course, I get to start with this question. So if I heard you right, Rob, the top 3 strengths of the city in general, the city of Laramie, or city.
City of Laramie, and how can we use those strengths to benefit Laramie?
Okay, so I think we've got great resources here, both with the University of Wyoming staff and faculty, and we have an incredible spirit of giving in this community. And I think the third thing is we are entrepreneurial and we need to be. So I think those are our strengths.
And how can we use those strengths to benefit the city? So just thoughts on how we can leverage those.
Yeah, so I mean, I think those strengths are especially important during the time we're experiencing right now. Right now, specifically to get through the COVID pandemic and get to the other side of it, and then to emerge stronger and better afterwards. So.
Great, thanks, Jane. All right,
Yep.
we will next go to you, Brett. So again, I'll ask you, what do you think are the top 3 strengths that the city of Laramie has, and how can we use those to leverage improvement in the city or benefit the city in the future?
As well, let's see. The first, I think, of Laramie's top 3 strengths is our people. We have a lot of smart people here. We have a lot of ambitious, educated, and entrepreneurial people, and I think that benefits our community tremendously. And this is one of the reasons why I want to sit on City Council. I hope to be able to help serve those people and help them to realize their dreams and promote their talents. Let's see, another thing that we have going for us is clean air and lots of recreational opportunities. In general, our location. I think that I think we're very well situated in that respect, and I think we should leverage those those advantages as well. And finally, I think the third thing that we have going for us is just well, let's see. Trying to choose among the among the various possibilities here. I think the other advantage we have is our location in the region. I think that we're on a major highway. We're connected to everything else, but we have the advantage of not being too close to the urban areas. So we're just far enough away that people can enjoy living here, and just close enough that we can avail ourselves of the opportunities that we have, being able to access the other communities.
Great, thanks, Brett. So next, Andy, I'll ask you the same question. The top 3 strengths of the city of Laramie, and how can we use those strengths to benefit the city?
Thank you, Rob, for the question. So I think you're going to hear what some of the other candidates have already said. Again, this is Andy Somerville. People power is our #1 strength, and that's such an all-encompassing topic. Volunteerism, the youth that are in our community, as well as longstanding community members that come together, the brain trust that exists in Laramie, both at the university and through all of our very innovative business owners that are in the community, and frankly, just a really willingness to go forward and get things done. The second one would be our community resources, absolutely. So UW, our tech industry, our tourism industry, all of those pieces that are here that are based on the natural landscape and entities that exist here. Those are the heart and soul of Laramie, and I think we can certainly employ those in the future. And then the third would be just the drive of innovation. Again, some of that comes from university, but I don't necessarily think all of it does. I think we have got a lot of very innovative businesses and other organizations and nonprofits in Laramie that have really kind of stepped out on the ledge to do things in a new way to keep moving forward. And how we leverage those, I think as the city's budget is affected by a loss of revenue due to COVID, and we see what that economic damage is, we can use volunteers. We can try to leverage more federal resources and more programs through those strengths that are already existing, or identify new ones. And then also we can certainly be a research community and try things in a new way, pilot projects and so on.
Great, thanks for that, Andy. So next I'll go to you, Mark. Again, same question. Top 3 strengths of the city of Laramie, and how can we use those to benefit the city?
Okay, well, most of mine were already used. I think the location, though, where we're situated in a major artery that basically runs from New York to San Francisco with Interstate 80, I think we could pull in some more light industry kinds of businesses for some revenue, also for some jobs. And of course, the university with all the act as far as knowledge and research and bringing kids out that are highly skilled in certain areas would help. As far as the community itself, I see it from what I've lived, I see it as pretty diverse and, good-natured people that can bring some social interactions, social programs that could make it a more attractive, although I feel it's a very attractive place. It brought me here 12 years ago, but maybe enhancing some of those programs, some of those institutions to bring more people here to make Laramie their home. Those are my top 3.
Great, thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
Next, we'll go to Caleb. So Caleb, put you in the hot seat. Top 3 strengths of the city of Laramie, and how can we use those strengths to benefit the city?
Well, thank you. So this is Caleb Hine, Ward 1, and I think our top 3 are low taxes. It really invites other businesses here, like some of the tech businesses that we've been talking about. Low taxes. Location is huge. We're right next door to some big cities, but again, far enough away that you don't have to live in the big city. And then 3 would be just the great people of Laramie. I mean, we got so many trades going on here. We have many business startups, and as well as existing businesses of people who've been here for a very long time. And but the community is very strong here, and I think the best way that we can use those resources is to continue to always put the community first by serving and cutting as much red tape for these startups as we can, as well as just letting the free market explode. Now, when I think about Laramie, I think about all the core values that we have all had here in Laramie, whether it means a college student who stayed to run their business, but I think our values are one of the biggest things that's going for us in the morale of the people.
Great, thanks, Caleb. And last but not least, Brian Harrington, top 3 strengths of the city of Laramie, and how can we use those to benefit the city?
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, this is Brian Harrington. So my top 3 strengths, I would say are largely defined by one of the bigger accomplishments of my first term, was the Thrive Laramie plan. And I think, one of those would be really just a well-educated workforce. I mean, we have an abundance of opportunity in both young and old, but well-trained employees and business owners. The second, I would say, is an abundance of outdoor activities. Regardless of what you like to do in the woods, you can do it and do it at a high level here in Laramie. And then I think the last piece is a little more cerebral. That would maybe be just a vibrant and strong sense of community. I mean, I think you saw that early on in the pandemic as people, bought diapers for a mom in need and things like that, started shopping more locally. So I think one of the ways we can use those things to grow is, as we recruit businesses, we are able to offer a well-educated workforce that the majority of Wyoming is not able to offer. And then we can attract and retain those employees through our other pieces, through our vibrant economy and outdoor activities. And I think, furthermore, Laramie can really serve as a model community for the rest of Wyoming as they sort of grapple with what it looks like to not be an energy-driven economy. Laramie doesn't have a lot of energy development. So we really can serve as students come in and then go out to Wyoming again. We can really use the things we do well to push those out to the rest of the state as well.
Great, thanks, Brian. So, starting with the positive there, and Jane, I apologize for putting you on the spot with kind of that lengthy question first. So this time you'll go towards the end. So this time we'll have 75 seconds for the answer. So we'll go back to our usual length. And I'll ask each of you, and I will start with you, Brett. Brett, what are the most pressing issues that you feel are facing our community, and how do you feel we should address them? So thinking about your top priorities in that respect.
Well, let's see. Where shall I begin? This is Brett Glass. I'm running for City Council, seat in Ward 1. Well, one of the problems that we're going to have going forward is that we're going to have less revenue. And right now, the city is wasting money. During the last term, the City Council has, for example, approved many expenditures that haven't gone out for bid as they should. And the city staff apparently finds it inconvenient to put things out for bid. And so even though state statute says that they should, they bill those things as professional services and don't actually send them out for bid. And this is costing our city money. We need to change that. I think that we need to deal better with COVID. We have a problem that the university is having an explosion of COVID cases, and we need to work very hard on making sure that the community is able to deal with that. I would advocate that we look seriously into some more restrictions, perhaps a masking ordinance, perhaps something to help protect public health in that situation. I think that let's see, the other, and I guess the other thing, since I see I only have 10 seconds left, is that we have too much bureaucracy. If you have problems dealing with the city, we need to fix that and make sure you're able to realize your dreams and ambitions. I will try to make sure that we improve that and that we have democracy rather than bureaucracy.
Great, thanks, Brett. So I'll go to you next, Andy. What are the most pressing issues you see facing the community, and how would you address them?
Thank you again, Rob, for the question. This is Andy Somerville. So the three top pressing issues, the first one will be no surprise to anybody, I think, is certainly our continued response to COVID-19 in our community. As we work with our community partners to track the cases very, very well, do contact tracing, and try to keep our community safe. That's going to be continually important as we go through the winter months and into next spring, as we kind of see how everything plays out. But not just the safety, but the social and economic fallout that's happened from a loss of revenue. People have lost jobs. Kids are online schooling right now, and all of those pieces. And it's really important that we're paying attention to that and supporting our community members and our businesses, frankly, through this time in any way we can. The second one would be the city's financial revenue. So this was an issue prior to COVID-19, and it's likely to be a more substantial issue in the future. And the revenue piece is really important to fund those continually important programs and critical infrastructure, public safety, roads, making sure that we're still collecting enough revenue for sewer and water and all of those good things. And then the third issue is certainly continued infrastructure investment. I don't think anybody in Laramie would be surprised if I said our streets and our sidewalks and our parks need some attention.
Great, thanks, Andy. I'll go to you next, Mark. What are the most pressing issues you see, and how would you address them?
Okay, Mark Andrews, Ward 2. So the COVID piece I see as being nationally, it's definitely impacting people. I don't see the statistics so much in Albany County as being that much of a problem. So I think that there should be precautions in place, but not an actually showing in our county and in our city. As far as two other things I'm looking at, businesses, I'm soliciting different businesses to see what's hampering them as far as ordinances and things that would hold them back as progressing in the city, and what could the council do to make it more business friendly to the city of Laramie. Those are probably my top two platform issues that I'm thinking about right now. And I think I'm running out of time.
Great, thanks, Mark.
Don't
You
really have a
actually
third.
Get it right on the nose. Good job.
All right, thank you.
All right, Caleb, I'll go next to you. What do you see are the most pressing issues in this for council, and how would you address them?
Thank you. Caleb Hine, Ward 1. I guess I see the most pressing issues coming against Laramie right now. First of all, is going to be our the safety, of course, but it goes much deeper than just, first of all, safety, budget, and then business, and making that our priority. As far as safety, I think common sense and personal responsibility of the individual is really going to rule the day. Educating the community about washing their hands, being mindful of the elderly if you're feeling sick. Just like any flu, we're going to have this happen every year, and we just need to be careful with spreading stuff as far as safety goes. Budgetary, I mean, everybody's on a tight budget right now. I think we do have a lot of spending we need to look at. I think one of the most important things that we need to do, we know where the money's going. They can give us all the stats of where the money is going, but we need to look at who's getting paid what, and if it's right, if it should be higher or not. And then businesses, my first year would be, as city councilman, would be doing zoning, as well as cutting the red tape for a lot of businesses who want to start up. But I think those are the three. I see
Great.
The timer. I ran out of time.
Good job again.
Great. All right.
Thanks, Caleb. Next, we'll go to you, Brian. So Brian, what are the top issues for you to address, and what would you do?
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, this is Brian Harrington. I would say probably the most significant hurdle that we have coming for Laramie's future is really our economic and community recovery from COVID. Whether or not my fellow candidates see this as a problem or not, it has sure had a serious effect on our local businesses. I think we probably need to be really creative in the ways that we implement our ordinances to allow for things, like businesses opening onto their sidewalks so that they're able to have increased seating, which is something we achieved in the last few months. The second piece I would say is environmental stewardship. This is a significant role of council, and I think aquifer protection should certainly be on that list, working with the county commissioners to find a way to really protect that into the future, because without water, none of the rest of this matters. And then I think probably the third piece would be finding ways to increase efficiency at the city so that we can continue to contend with the revenue shortfalls. We know that our budgets will be shrinking, but also our distributions from the state are likely to decrease as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Brian. And last but not least, Jane, what do you see as the most pressing issues for the community, and how would you address them on council?
Okay, so this is Jane Pierce, Ward 2. The top 3 pressing issues for the city, and they go hand in hand, is our budget, economic recovery, and then that public safety issue. And what we need to do to address them is, many of you know, or at least I hope you know, the cities, municipalities in the state of Wyoming are extremely dependent on the state of Wyoming for revenue. So we have to continue to ask for other tools to be made available to all the communities, because what works in Laramie may not necessarily work in Powell, for example. So in terms of that economic development piece, we've got to really put our heads together and think creatively and be creative and work towards any level of diversification that we possibly can. And then in terms of the public safety. Again, it's all about our partnerships with the county and the state. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jane.
Yep.
So this question, again, we'll test our timer. This time we'll go short. This is a relatively simple question. I'm going to start with you first, Andy. Would you support, since many of you talked about COVID, we're going to have a couple questions, maybe a few questions here about COVID. First one is a pretty short one. Would you support a citywide policy that required all citizens, including students, to wear masks in public at all times? If so, yes. Why or why not? And we'll give everybody basically 30 seconds to answer this question.
Thank you again. This is Andy Somerville. Would I support a citywide policy for masks for everybody in public? I think that really depends on the situation and the ongoing situation in Laramie. We know it's best practice. We know it's highly recommended by the state. And as we watch our COVID numbers and certainly what happens on the UW campus affects the larger community, I think we need to be cognizant of that. If it's recommended by public health experts, then yes, I would likely support that and do everything we could in the community to form those partnerships with business and the university and all of our other entities to make sure that was in force if it's needed.
Great, thanks, Andy. We'll go to you next, Mark. So very briefly, 30 seconds. Would you support a citywide policy requiring all citizens to wear masks in public at all times? Why or why not?
Outside of doors, absolutely not. I don't think the science is there to support that. Indoors, if they are recommending or mandating masks, yes, definitely yes. I think that's so that's where I stand on that issue.
Great, thank you, Mark. We'll go to you next, Caleb. Caleb, would you support a citywide policy requiring all citizens to wear masks at all times? Why or why not?
Thank you. Caleb Hine with Ward 1. Absolutely not. And the reason for that is there is no reason for it. This has been bringing way out of proportion. There's new research showing that this isn't as big as they've made it out to be. So no, I wouldn't support it. And the reason for that, and if they did have something close to it, that it did start becoming quite the issue, then I'd leave it up to the businesses to do it. It's not our right as city council to mandate masks. It's up to the state. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Caleb. I'll go to you next, Brian. Would you support a citywide mandate requiring masks at all times in public? Why or why not?
Thank you, Rob. I think maybe just off the top, I'll say yesterday we surpassed as a nation 200,000 deaths. So I think the other candidate's assertion that this isn't a big deal is just false. And then I would also say that if the public health officials think this is a good idea for us to wear masks, I would support it, absolutely. It's been proven to slow the spread of the disease, and I don't know why we wouldn't do that and take care of the most vulnerable amongst us. Thank you.
Good, thanks, Brian. Go to you next, Jane. Would you support a citywide ordinance requiring masks for people in public at all times? Why or why not?
Yes, because it's the right thing to do.
All right, short and simple. I wasn't ready for that. Okay, and again, this time around, last but not least, it's you, Brett. Again, would you support a citywide policy requiring all citizens to wear masks at all times in public? Why or why not?
This is Brett Glass, and I'm running for City Council Ward 1, and I would absolutely support a masking ordinance. The coronavirus is no less deadly and no less communicable than it was in April. And just recently, Albany County has had the greatest growth in COVID cases in the state, most likely due to the influx of invincible 20-somethings that we had at the university. The science supports this. Countries, cities, and states which have had masking ordinances have had significantly better results in terms of protecting public health. One of the city's responsibilities is to protect public health, and we should do it.
Great, thanks, Brett. All right, I'm going to stay on the topic of COVID because it is kind of the topic of the day. I am going to start with you, Mark. So as we know, there are ordinances in place already for business owners and for persons, those in quarantine or isolation, for example. So imagining that business owners or people don't follow COVID-19 orders, what type of punishment would you endorse in those cases? And I'll start with you, Mark.
I'd like to take Jane's 28 more seconds to respond to this, if that's okay. Well, that's
what I should say first is I'm going to give you all the regular 75 seconds to answer this question, so you don't get a 30-second response. So that hopefully that'll help you out. So we'll start with you, Mark. Again, I'll just repeat the question. What type of punishment would you endorse for persons or business owners who don't follow COVID-19 orders?
The question's a problem, and that we have the authority under any kind of law or regulation to punish people for this sort of infraction. It's a tough nut because to me personally, if a business has a sign on the door, I'm going to respect that as I would walking into somebody's home that says, please take your shoes, please, you know, wipe your feet before you come in. As far as Chris, I really do. I understand the scare that's going on and the deaths attributed to COVID-19. It's somewhat questionable as far as what's being reported and how it's being reported. But as far as Laramie, I'd say stick with what is state mandated and, you know, go from there. That's all I can say about that.
Great, thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
I'll go to you next, Caleb. So again, I'll just repeat the question and we'll go back to the standard 75 seconds to answer. What type of punishment would you endorse for persons or business owners who are not following COVID-19 orders?
Thank you. This is Caleb Hine, Ward 1. It's not our place. Again, it is up to the state official and our state health boards and everything to regulate that and to issue punishment too. It's not up to us. And on a second note, to go off of some of the other candidates, you start testing more, like what we see in the UW, and the cases go up. It's pretty. I mean, the math makes sense. You also, you get more deaths when you add people that might have had pre-existing conditions. So there's new statistics out, you'll see that, but I would not by any means get involved in this, as it's something of the state to regulate something. I'm not going to overstep city council. We're not kings in this position. We're city servants and should be protecting the rights and the freedoms of all Laramie people. Are we going to do this with the flu every year? No, we're not. And so, and it's killed a lot more people. So not to mitigate the deaths that have happened from this. They're awful, but it's not as big as they make it out to be. It has affected us, yes, but not as big.
Okay, so thanks, Caleb. Next, I'll go to you, Brian, and I'll ask you the same question. What type of punishment would you endorse for persons or business owners who are not following COVID-19 orders?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. This is Brian Harrington. This has been a conversation we've been having internally at the city a little bit as we've watched violations already unfold. I mean, we can all go to walk downtown on a Friday night and look at bars that are not following the current public health orders. You know, unfortunately, the city does have very little ability to do much in this situation. It has frustrated me because I personally believe that there should be a punishment for those. But if our county and our state don't choose to punish those business owners or individuals, you know, I'm not sure what else we can do. You know, there's the idea of the social contract theory that we all by living in a society, have a responsibility to take care of one another. And I think if you break that is a fundamental component of our democracy. So, you know, I would take it very seriously, but I just think, frankly, we don't have a lot of ability to do much about it.
Okay, thanks, Brian. So next I'll go to you, Jane, and I'll ask you the same question. What type of punishment would you endorse for persons or business owners who are not following COVID-19 orders?
Thanks, Rob. This is Jane Pierce, Ward 2. Councillor Harrington answered exactly how I would have answered. I think the only thing I could possibly add to that is if we have a business owner who needs support, you know, in terms of having people in their establishment that are not wearing masks and not behaving appropriately in terms of masks and social distancing, you know, there is the ability to be charged with a variety of things, including trespass. So, you know, we have those other options. The business owners have that option, but that'd be about it. It's tough. It's very difficult. So.
Great, thanks, Jane. Next, I'll go to you, Brett. And again, I'll ask the same question. What type of punishment would you endorse for persons or business owners who do not follow COVID-19 orders?
Brett Glass, City Council, Ward 1. Well, under Wyoming law, businesses have a requirement to keep things sanitary and safe, and cities are authorized to do some things in that realm. In some cases, the state has to approve them, and the city of Jackson Hole has led the way in doing so, and in fact has imposed some restrictions which I think are good. In terms of what to do in particular about different businesses, well, restaurants and bars aren't allowed to serve bad food. They have to follow health regulations, and in fact, the city has the authority to appoint a health officer and do health inspections. We should do this. Tattoo parlors aren't allowed to infect people, and they can be shut down if they don't follow proper sanitation. Again, we should do the same things. We shouldn't overburden businesses, and in fact, we should help them, but we must protect public health. This is very important, not just for our seniors, because we never know who will be unexpectedly susceptible to the virus, and we need to look out for everybody, all members of the public.
Great, thanks, Brett. And Andy, I'll come to you last with the same question. What type of punishment would you endorse for persons or business owners who don't follow COVID-19 orders?
Thanks, Rob. Andy Somerville, Ward 1. I think that this is one of those instances where, as I understand the situation, everybody thinks that the city might have more power than they actually do. And certainly the state and the county are the primary role when it comes to public health, although we do have public health inspections and things like that that are run by the city. I think the city's role in this, without any other powers that I'm aware of, would really need to be focusing on educating, and as Councillor Pierce indicated, helping those businesses. So if we're having repeated issues, whether it's with a business or UW students or whatever it is in the community, we need to find out what's causing that issue and offer any support and tools that we do have in our toolbox to try to resolve that situation so it doesn't continue. If we continue to have more issues, then we may need to look more deeply into what powers the city has in terms of fining, but that again gets into another conversation about our police presence and what we're asking them to do and how you enforce that. And that's a much longer conversation than I think 75 seconds allows to discuss.
Great, Andy, thanks. So let's talk about COVID just a little bit more. And this time I'm going to go to a positive question. I'm going to ask, and I'm going to start with you, Caleb. So I'll ask you the question in a minute. So this is the question. When the COVID crisis ends, what 2 actions would you take to support the economic recovery of the city or the citizens' mental health and attitude? What 2 actions would you take? And we will have.
Before my timer, how many seconds do I have?
We'll go back to the normal timing now of 75 seconds. So if I don't mention otherwise, you have 75 seconds.
Okay, thanks. Tell me when to go.
So you may answer now.
Okay, thank you. So as far as when the COVID crisis does get over with, I think the biggest thing for us to do is to hold up all the businesses who want to do it. I mean, that is the economic structure of Laramie, is to do the businesses. As far as community, we've seen a lot of great donations coming through Interfaith. A lot of people have been affected by this. It's no means not affected by it, but I'd say also getting back to normal, getting back to our normal that we are used to is the main thing, both in our community, businesses, our just the feel around town and our safety. That's what's most important. I'd say cutting regulations so that new, existing, and businesses can get going and continue to do that would be the main thing.
Good, thanks, Caleb. Brian, I'll go to you next. So again, the same question. When the COVID crisis ends, what 2 actions would you take to support the economic recovery or community mental health in Laramie?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. This is Brian Harrington, Ward 1 again. I think first, maybe the most significant thing we could do is think further out than the first year or the first week. So the first project, one of the first projects we worked on my first term in council was the 10-year economic development plan that I mentioned earlier. And while that did not account for the halted economy from the fall in extractive industries at the state or a pandemic, it built a lot of tools that I think are more important now than ever. And so I think implementing that would be a significant first step in helping businesses recover. And that includes things like, creative solutions to a lot of really hard problems. Things like, again, opening onto sidewalks for restaurants or the Hollyhock Commons, many things like that. I think the second thing is really going to be making sure that this recovery includes everybody, that as we recover as a city, we're including the entirety of our community. I mean, we have to be cognizant of the fact that this is affecting low-income residents in Laramie more than anyone else. These are the people who have to go to work at the restaurants. They're the people who have to go to work at the hotels to clean and things like that. So we have to ensure that we acknowledge the fact that they've really been through a traumatic experience over the last 5 months.
Thanks, Brian. So I'll go to you next, Jane. Same question. What 2 actions would you take or do you think should be implemented when the coronavirus crisis ends for the economic recovery or community mental health in Laramie?
Thanks, Rob. Jane Pierce, Laramie City Council, Ward 2. All the answers have been great, and honestly, I don't mean to be flip, but we just need to hang a big old open for business sign everywhere around town. I think it'll be, when this ends, we just have to get out there and enjoy our community and see each other and, have a parade. I don't know, just get out there and kind of get back to what we all used to do, which I think will be great. And other than that, just, if I'm elected to council, when this happens, we just need to listen and just take advantage of any and all opportunities out there, in terms of helping folks in their recovery and do what we can do to the best of our ability. So that's
great.
it.
Thanks. Sorry to interrupt you, Jane. Thanks. Appreciate the answer. All right, next we'll go to you, Brett, and I'll ask you again the same question. When the coronavirus crisis ends, what 2 actions would you take to support the economic recovery and or the community health in Laramie?
Thank you, Rob. Brett Glass, Ward 1. Well, the first thing we need to do is get everyone vaccinated, and this is going to be very important. This is something that the city and county should work together to do. Let's make sure that we have immunity, and let's make sure we don't have another wave of infection. The second thing we should do is create jobs. We need to get everybody back to work, eliminate red tape so that we can create more jobs, and then we should leverage the new acceptance of telework Going back to our strength as a community where we have recreation and quality of life and clean air, we should leverage those strengths to bring people to Laramie and to boost our economy, because we can, because we are going to be a better place to work than the big city, and people are going to be looking to us as a more practical alternative than they did before.
Thanks, Brett. Really appreciate that. Andy, again, the same question. When the coronavirus ends, what 2 actions should be implemented to support economic recovery and or mental health in the community?
Thanks, Rob. Andy Somerville, Ward 1. I think that I really appreciate the question, and both everybody's talking a lot about economic recovery, but I don't think we talk enough about mental health toll this has taken on everybody. And I'll just take a minute to talk about the toll it's taken on my children, frankly, and me as a mom who's been home with her kids for 6 months working from home, and they don't get to see their friends, and they don't go to karate, and they don't go to dance class, and they don't do all of these things. And so I think there's going to be a tremendous need to really get people back out into the community, in our businesses, in our nonprofits. And we need to partner with them. We need to have what Councilor Pierce called, open for business. We need to have activities. And I think the city can sponsor and work together and try to encourage that kind of activity, with also the realization that I think it's going to take a minute. There's not going to be an announcement that says, hey, we're over, we're done, and everybody's just going to feel comfortable coming out of their homes. I think it'll be a little bit slower than that. For economic recovery, again, just doubling down on our economic diversity or plan that the city has approved in terms of Thrive, figuring out which pieces we can implement, and then continuing to promote and work with our partners for those innovative practices. The world's been turned upside down, and I think we're going to get some good things out of this and some opportunities that can really help our community move forward.
Great, thanks, Andy. And last but not least, Mark, when the coronavirus crisis ends, what 2 actions would you want to see implemented to support the economic recovery of Laramie and or the mental health of the community?
This might sound crass as well. It was never here. If you took our county, let alone our city, and the statistics that were out there as far as deaths and even positive tests, it really was not in Laramie. I don't even think it was in Albany County. Can do when it's over, nationwide when it's over, support the businesses that were hurt. Here, hotspot there, that did create negative impacts in Laramie. And I know people that have businesses that were significantly impacted, private businesses, that were very much hurt by this. So support them as much as we can. That's all I have to say about that.
Good, thanks, Mark. So that'd probably be the last question we have on COVID. We'll move on to a couple questions about governance in the city of Laramie. And so I'm going to start with a couple of issues that have come up lately in our community and in others. I'm going to start with you, Brian. The first question I'm going to ask is, would you support an elected mayor rather than the current city manager form of government in Laramie?
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, it's Brian Harrington. Sorry, I got started a little bit ahead of the spotlight. Again, this is Brian Harrington. I do not support the state or citywide elected mayor at this point. I mean, I think it could be interesting, but I'm not exactly sure that I would support a change in wide sweeping change in direction and sort of like flipping the table of the city every 4 years. I think right now we have a situation where other communities that have citywide elected mayors are calling to ask me how we got to this point, because they're interested in moving more towards a city manager form of government themselves. So I think, I generally support the system we're in now. I think it allows for a more equitable individual on council. So it allows every person to have a shared voice and an equal voice. So quick answer would be no.
Good, thanks, Brian. I'll go to you next, Jane. Would you support an elected mayor rather than the current city manager form of government that we have in Laramie?
No. I would support a county administrator over at the county. So if that were to ever be a question, and I say this with pretty good authority, you know, having been there for a while, and I've got a master's degree in public administration, so I've studied this. You know, I'm not being flip. Municipalities run by professionals is the best way to go.
Great, thanks, Jane. I'll go to you next, Brett. And again, it's a pretty simple question. Would you support an elected mayor rather than our current city manager form of government in Laramie?
Yes, Brett Glass, candidate for Ward 1, and I absolutely would support an elected mayor. As Laramie grows to the magic population number of 50,000, which is the figure where it will suddenly appear on the maps of major corporations, such as chain stores, we need to have a good responsive government in place. Right now, we have a government that is largely unaccountable to the people. And city council does not do a good enough job of managing that government and making sure that it's responsive to us. One way to change that is to have an elected mayor so that the executive of the city, the person who hires and fires people, the person who directs the city staff is directly responsible to us. So I am all for that. I think that we should start working on that immediately, and hopefully the League of Women Voters will spearhead the effort to do it.
Good, thanks, Brett. Andy, same question to you. Would you support an elected mayor rather than the current city manager form of government in Laramie?
Thank you, Rob. Andy Somerville, Ward 1. So this is a unique question. And as a former mayor for the city of Laramie, I would tell you that there's not a lot of people in Laramie that understand what type of government we have. I don't know how many times I've been asked if I actually ran for citywide mayor because people just don't understand the city manager form of government that we run. And there's only 3 cities in the state that run those types of governments. They both have their pros and their cons. Certainly with the form we have now, you get professional management. And that's something that in this day and age, with the complexities that come along in terms of federal and state requirements and financing, you have to have that professional management. Where the other side becomes more of an interesting argument is who is responsible for doing what, right? There seems to be a lot of conversations where people think there's a gray area, that the city manager is in charge of this or the council is in charge of this. And each situation is different. What I would tell you is that I would support putting it out to a ballot vote for the electorate, if nothing else, to educate them on the type of city government that we run right now. But if we don't do that, I think we need to have better, clearly defined policies and procedures in the city on who's responsible for what types of decisions.
Good, thanks, Andy. Next, I'll go to you, Mark, and ask you the same question. Would you support an elected mayor rather than the current city manager system we have currently in Laramie?
Yes, I would. 5 seconds to Jane Pierce.
You've caught us off guard. Good job. All right. And the last person I'll ask this question to is you, Caleb, again. Would you support, do you support an elected mayor rather than the current city manager system we have in Laramie?
Yeah, Caleb Hine with Ward 1. Yes, I would. And the reasoning for that is we need, if somebody holds as much power, and it's due to, I think it's due to city council having an idea that they listen to the staff almost too much, to where they don't do their own research. They have people that do the research, and this is nothing on the staff. I just think the city council really needs to understand their role in this. They're the decision makers, and the staff is not. They're for advice, yes, but I think I would support. There's a lot of pros and cons, like Andy was saying, on both sides of the argument. I lean on the side of a strong mayor. I think we're ready for it, and I think I would support putting it to the ballot to let the community decide. And yeah, I'd look for the support of everybody to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Caleb. So now we'll go to a slightly different question. So this is in response to how citizens have access to their city council. So currently, people have freedom of speech under the First Amendment, but we have a lottery system on city council right now. Do you think that this impedes the right of redress we have under the First Amendment? And I will start with you, Jane.
You did say Jane, right?
There you are. Sorry about that.
Hi, everybody. Jane Pierce, Laramie City Council, Ward 2. We're doing the best we can, right? We have to have social distancing occur within the chambers, and we make the Zoom link available to anybody who wants to comment. So I don't know. These are stressful situations, and like I said, we're doing the best we can. And I guess that's all I can really say. I mean, my phone number is public. I've got a city email. It's public. People can get a hold of me. They can find me if they need to talk to me. So.
Great, thanks, Jane. And I appreciate you kind of elucidating, the reasons why the lottery was put in place. So I'll go to you next, Brett. Again, same question. Do you consider the lottery system City Council currently has as kind of an impedance of the First Amendment? And, more to that, how can it be addressed, and is it reasonable?
Oh, well, the United States Supreme Court on the First Amendment says that the government doesn't have the right to suppress speech, but it does have the right to control the time, place, and manner of speech. And in fact, that's necessary to keep order. One thing I must say is that during COVID-19, we've actually had better access to City Council because of the Zoom meetings and the moderation and the way that we're able to keep order there. I don't think that it's impacted things. I think in some ways it's actually made the meetings more orderly. The bigger problem that we have, though, is the council does not listen to the public or give them the same priority as they do to staff and to lobbyists. City Council absolutely should make sure that in discussions of all issues, the public gets the first and the last word, and should be asked to speak before council begins to deliberate, not after they've taken sides and they get to make comments at the very end of the proceedings. That's not right, and it causes all sorts of problems with the process. I think it shows disrespect for the public. We saw some instances a couple of years ago where the mayor was dismissive of the public, and that absolutely should not be. Yes, we have a lot of people seeking to speak to council. I think that's a good thing, and I think we should promote it while keeping as much order as we can.
Good, thanks, Brett. Andy, I'll go to you next. Again, do you think the lottery system impedes First Amendment access? Why or why not? And what are your general thoughts on that?
Thanks, Rob. Andy Somerville, Ward 1. I don't necessarily think that it impedes access. I would agree with the comment that Zoom has made the council meetings more accessible. That's one of those innovative things we've done during COVID that I hope sticks long term. It lets people that maybe have kids running around or can't actually get to city council to come down and comment. As far as who gets to talk in person in the chambers, the only other option is to really elongate those public comment periods and bring people in and out of the room, and that is probably logistically challenging if somebody absolutely wants to speak. But then this is again where the role of the mayor comes in. They should always let people speak before council deliberates on an idea, and they can control and work with city management on how people are getting in and out. So if there's a lot of complaints that people aren't getting access to city council in the way that they want, then that would be the mayor's responsibility to be responsive to that.
Good, thanks, Andy. I'll go to you next, Mark. Again, same question. Do you think the current lottery system that we have impedes access under the First Amendment? And If so, why? And if not, how do you address the issue just generally?
I think it's unfortunate how the lottery system was put in place, and I think we all know what spurred that on. Potentially some preventative measures should have been put in place to kind of dampen that kind of spectacle that happened about 3-4 weeks ago. As far as saying it impedes the First Amendment, I don't think so. I think there's other ways to communicate to the council to get your point across. And as long as none of those questions or comments are being just put aside, I don't think there's an impediment there.
Good. Thanks, Mark. Next, I'll go to you, Caleb. And again, same question. How do you feel about the lottery system? Do you think that it impedes First Amendment access? And what are your thoughts more generally on access to council?
Yeah, thank you. Caleb Hine, running for Ward 1. And I think that this is probably one of, as far as pulling the best from COVID that we can, this is absolutely one of the best things that we could have gotten from this, is putting it on Zoom and making it more accessible to the public to join in as we have, and be able to participate. I'd want to broadcast that out to everyone in Laramie. It's just really great. Now, as far as the question, getting down to the specifics of the question, do I support it? I think it was the best that the council could do at the moment at what they were given. They were trying to anyway, they were trying to do the best they could as far as the disorderly conduct that they had seen in that week before. And yes, there could have been something that they could have done differently, maybe putting a guard out front, but with the circumstances, I think it's probably the best, and I don't see it impeding unless council isn't reading questions or allowing someone to speak. It's not impeding the First Amendment.
Great, thanks, Caleb. And finally to you, Brian, same question. Do you feel that the lottery system does impede First Amendment access? And just more generally, how do you feel about issues regarding access to council, or are there any?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. This is Brian Harrington for Ward 1 again. I think it's, I don't love the lottery system, but I see why it was necessary. I mean, we were at a point where the same people were commenting each week, and that's fine. But the first come, first serve thing was not allowing other members of the public to speak who may or may not have differing views. And so I think as a council, our responsibility is to listen to the public and to really hear what they're saying. So, I mean, I think we all take very seriously our responsibility to read and respond to emails, to answer phone calls, to take meetings. I've been really locked in with COVID and staying pretty close to home, but constituent meetings are the meetings I'm taking. So, I think it is largely it's been effective. We've never seen more public comment than since March. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, the things we're doing are working because we've all had a desire to increase public participation, and this is it. So thank you.
Good, thanks, Brian. All right, so thanks for those answers on governance issues. So we'll spend the rest of our time, as much time as we have, going through some policy questions. So just random policy questions, different issues. I'm going to start with you first, Brett. So the first kind of general policy question that council faces is this: how should local government deal with revenue declines due to the economic downturn?
Brett Glass, Ward 1. Well, as I've already mentioned, the city has not done a good job of economizing in the past. They haven't, again, put things out for bid that really should, even by state law, go out for bid. They've used a loophole which says that if something is a professional services contract, you don't have to send it out for bid, and they've abused that loophole. I think it's time to close it. I think that we need to stick to our knitting. The city has certain responsibilities which are not handled by other parts of government, and those are the ones that we should focus on. We should make sure that we have quality city services and reasonably priced city services, and not have to raise those prices as a result of the fiscal shortfalls that we're going to experience. And again, in general, we should just be more responsible and take a closer look at everything. Now, again, as a business person who runs two businesses and is an electrical engineer, and so I have to do a lot of math, I think that's one of my strengths. And I think that if I'm able to serve on council, I'll be able to help find the right places to cut without cutting anything essential, and also make sure that the quality of the essential services that we have is improved.
Great, thanks, Brett. I'll go to you next, Andy. So how should local government deal with revenue declines due to the economic downturn?
Thanks, Rob. Andy Somerville, Ward 1. I think this is just going to be exacerbating a problem that already existed. Per capita, we certainly have less revenue generally over the last 10 years than most other cities in the state of Wyoming. And in general, municipalities in the state of Wyoming are incredibly dependent on state support, far more than any of their peers and other that are located in any other states. And so what my focus before on council and would probably continue to be is just about the tools in the toolbox, trying to get as many options approved by the state legislature so that each municipality and certainly Laramie can make those decisions on their own. I agree that in downturn and decline of revenue, we have to look at the budget and really re-envision what we want that money to be used for and how we should be spending it, making sure that we're economizing. But I will tell you, in a lot of ways, there's just not a lot of fluff in the city of Laramie budget as it is right now. And so any reductions would potentially impact core services, not water and sewer, because those are what we call enterprise funds that are funded separately, but certainly fire and police, which are a substantial portion of the city's budget, as well as, street projects and things along those lines. So I think we have to do a combination of things.
Rob, you're muted.
Thanks for that. I appreciate that. That's like that's the new catchphrase of 2020, right? So again, Mark, how should you deal, or how would you have local government deal with revenue shortfalls due to the economic downturn?
Well, I think first and foremost is to get businesses that were hampered in the last 4 months running again full tilt. And also that I've noticed, I've only been here 12 years, but I've noticed some businesses that have closed down that remain vacant. Kmart is the one that is in the foremost of my mind. Weeks of the year, I don't quite understand. So working with the Chamber of Commerce, bringing in more business revenue, I think is a first step. Line by line and prioritizing what is needed and what might be able to have some small cuts in the short term until we get onto a stable foundation again, I think are two items that we could look at.
I'm having trouble with the mute button now, as you can see. Thanks, Mark. Next, we'll go to you, Caleb. Hopefully you have better luck with the mute button than I do. But again, same question. How should local government deal with revenue declines with the economic downturn?
Yeah, so a lot of businesses have been unfortunately affected by this. Oh, and this is Caleb with Ward 1, forgot that. I know I'm forgetting that part, but I think a common sense approach would be to strengthen those businesses, our existing businesses in town, increase our base of revenue by doing that. And you do that by, one, inviting businesses to town. You got to continually do that. I think about some of the tech businesses, just because they said no a year ago, just because they said no 3 years ago, doesn't mean that they're going to say no this year. We need to continually ask, and if you don't ask, you don't receive. So just common sense type approach. I guess that one, getting back to, you know, our normal entrepreneurial ship that we have here in Laramie, I think it's a very, very important point to get back to that. I think morale is going to be great when we can get back. And after this whole COVID thing, I think that will really improve the situation in whole. Yeah, let the free market do its thing and that it does best, and continue the American dream.
Good, thanks, Caleb. Brian, I'll go to you next. And again, how should we deal with the revenue declines that we're currently facing? Economic downturn, or if you think it's more structural?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would. This is Brian. Sorry, Brian Harrington again. I would lean towards this is more of a structural issue that is just being exacerbated by the current sort of both the economic slowdown at the state and COVID. I mean, I think to former Mayor Somerville's point, really the tools in the toolbox is the thing here. We have very few opportunities as a city to ask the voters of Laramie what they want to do for their own future. And so, you know, I certainly support any efforts to increase the amount of opportunities that we have to bring things onto a ballot for the voters to decide. But again, I do think this is more of a structural issue that's just being exacerbated by the current economic climate. And you know, I think that the city of Laramie largely, you know, we do with about half the employees of other communities our size about the same things that they're doing. So we're an incredibly efficient government already, but I think we need to continue that and figure out ways that we can be increasingly efficient as our budgets inevitably shrink.
Good, thanks, Brian. And Jane, last round to you on this question. How should the local government deal with revenue declines due to the economic downturn, or if you believe it's more structural, how do we deal with it?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. This is Jane Pierce, Laramie City Council, Ward 2. It's about the tools in the toolbox, and it's about efficiency. As other candidates have mentioned, you know, the state of Wyoming provides those tools, and they provide a significant portion of our city revenue or of our city budget. So we just need to be as efficient as we can. And we need to focus on technologies. I mean, what we've been doing over the last years has really been working in terms of using technology to help staff be more efficient in what they do. So, and we do some really pretty significant internal restructuring of jobs and people and professional development for them. So I think that's important. I think first and foremost, you know, it is about those essential services that we still need to provide. And we just have to do the best we can with what the cards we've been dealt. So
good. All right. Well, thanks, Jane. I'm going to go to another question. This is a three-part question, so I'm going to start with you, Andy. So the first part of the question is, what do you define as affordable housing in your mind? Secondly, do you think Laramie has an adequate supply of affordable housing for all income levels? And if not, what do you think we should do to address the issue? So what is affordable housing in your mind? Do we have adequate supply for all income levels? And if not, what should we do?
Thanks, Rob. Andy, Somerville, Ward 1, and thanks for putting me first on this three-part long question. So the first thing is, how would I define affordable housing? You know, I think anything essentially less than a third, I think that's what they recommend for a mortgage, although it's been a long time since I applied for a mortgage, as far as what people are able to afford. Second, do we have an adequate supply? Absolutely not. Our housing prices are incredibly expensive. Our rent can be incredibly expensive in places. and very difficult for people to afford. And one thing that we don't talk about enough is Albany County has one of the highest poverty levels in the state. Whether that has to do with the number of students we have or not is an open question. However, it extends far beyond just students. And so I think we need to keep that in mind. How do we address that? You can do a couple of things. You know, the city has invested in some partnerships with developers to put up, you know, income-based quality housing. You've seen that up near Walmart and a few other places around town. I think you can continue to do that and work the partnership with the tax credits. I think we have to just in general in Laramie improve our overall housing stock and continue development of housing and apartments. Essentially at the end of the day, it's a how many do you have versus how many do you need question, and that really impacts the pricing for everybody.
Great, thanks, Andy. And I know this is a tough question because it does have a little bit of detail. I'll go to you next, Mark. And again, I'll ask the same 3 questions. So what do you think affordable housing means? Do we have an adequate supply in Laramie? And if not, what do we need to do to address the problem?
I think affordable housing defined is what your personal finances allow. And do we have enough affordable housing here? That's a tough question. But even going beyond that, what can we as city council do to dictate what? Honestly, as harsh as that sounds, I don't know, outside of, you know, deviating from the free market, and if houses aren't getting filled, rentals or even sales, prices will naturally go down. So as a member of city council, I don't see where we have an input for this issue. That's all.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
Caleb, I will go to you next and basically ask you the same 3 questions. What do you think affordable housing means? Do we have an adequate supply? And if not, how do we address the issue?
Can you hear me okay? Okay, cool. Caleb Hine, running for Ward 1. I think as far as what I think affordable housing is exactly right. It's according to what you can afford, and Laramie's normal average income is, from what I remember, is $42,000 or $40,000, and so I think it's a quarter to a third of your regular or monthly pay that your mortgage should take up, or some. I remember a statistic like that. So it is a unique question. I'm grateful for it. As far as what can we do about it, we can, as far as city council, we can actually step up to bat for a lot of these companies wanting to bring in a bunch of small developers wanting to bring in small or affordable housing, to bring in that, and saying yes a lot more, and joining in the middle versus requiring these developers to do everything. We really need to go hand in hand with any and all developers we can, to say yes a lot more.
Good, thanks, Caleb. Brian, same question to you. How do you define affordable housing? Do you think that we have an adequate supply? And if not, what should we do about it? Or what would you do about it?
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, Brian Harrington, running for Ward 1. I think to the first question, my wife and I looked for over 1.5 years for our first home in Laramie. We'd been living in apartments for years. And it took a full 1.5 years to find a house in our price range that checks all those boxes of what is deemed affordable. And we're both working professionals. And so rather than affordable, I like to use the term attainable. I think that makes it a little more clear to the public. I mean, a $250,000 home might be attainable to somebody, but it's not attainable to a first-time home buyer. So I think that it's pretty clear that that we don't have enough. The 2015 housing study clearly says that we are very deficient in sort of what they called the missing middle, sort of those like mid-level homes are clearly missing. And then I think for actions that we could take as a council, you know, I think finding creative solutions to this problem is something we can do. I think things like land banking and incentives for developers, including at least a portion of their development as an affordable or attainable housing, could go a long way to really meeting this need.
Good, thanks, Brian. Jane, I'll go next to you and again ask you the same three questions. What do you think, in your mind, how do you define affordable housing? Does Laramie have an adequate supply? And if not, what would you do about it?
Yeah, this is Jane Pierce, running for Laramie City Council Ward 2. In terms of how would I define affordable, I think Brian Harrington said it right. You know, it's what's attainable to each individual, and he's absolutely right. We're kind of missing that middle piece, and so the answer to the second question is there an adequate supply? Absolutely not. You know, we don't have that middle price range, that 150 to 200,000 or the 100 to 150,000, and we need that. And how do we get that? That's tough, because the folks who build, right, they obviously build and develop for a living, and they need to make a living, right? So how do you find that? And Counselor or Candidate Somerville, you know, she hit the nail on the head to some extent in terms of looking at, you know, improving our housing stock, as well as you know, partnering with you know, organizations that will help us kind of meet in the middle on some of those price points, and develop some of those houses. I mean, you know, if I had a chunk of change and I was, you know, in the housing business, I'd certainly start purchasing and doing remodels. You know, I think we have a real good opportunity to do some infilling and do some remodeling. You know, it's not a skill set I have, but but I think there's real opportunity in this community to do that as well. So
great.
Anyway, that's it.
Thanks, Jane.
Yep.
Appreciate your answer. And then they've already figured out who will be next. Brett, again, same three questions. How do you define affordable housing? Does Laramie have an adequate supply? And if not, what do you think should be done?
Brett Glass, Ward 1. I could talk about this for hours. This is an area of expertise for me because one of my businesses is involved in providing affordable housing. In general, the standard is that if you're working, 30% of your income is the maximum that should go to housing. But if you're a student, then you need to compare the price to other cities because you are intentionally foregoing income while you go to school. So you can't really judge in the case of a student, again, as well as you can in the case of a household. Now, does the city have an adequate supply? Well, again, on a nationwide basis, housing in Laramie is already a bargain. It is so much less expensive than in any major city or in California or many other places. And frankly, building materials always cost a certain amount of money. So there is a floor on what anyone can charge and even break even. And we'll always have some people who struggle with that. There's just, you know, the thing to do, I think, in that case is to raise their incomes. And again, this goes back to economic development. Now, what should we do? Well, first thing we should not do is we should not promote tax credit housing, which is a scam where developers will come in and intentionally try to solicit federal dollars to build housing, and then they actually take the tax credits and bundle them into securities and sell them. This is a scam. The tax credit developments in Laramie do not do a good job of that. and we should definitely look to other solutions if we think that there's a problem. One thing also that the city can do is not increase the cost of housing through its own policy. We should not impose mandatory inspections, not impose extreme burdens on landlords, not create such restrictive zoning that people can't build housing, and make sure that utilities remain affordable. And if we do those things, I think we'll do the best that we can, given our limited authority to do something about housing.
Good, thanks, Brett. So we are in the last 10 minutes, and so I've got two more questions that are somewhat controversial. So we're going to end on those. One of them is a pretty quick question, because really it's just a yes or no and quick justification. So I'm going to make it a 30-second question. I'm going to start with you, Mark. And I'm going to ask simply this: would you vote to raise Laramie's water rates that are currently the highest in the surrounding area?
No. No, they've been escalating. I've been here up 12 years and I think they've went up threefold. So I think that issue needs to be looked at, and especially in the economic times that we are with the pandemic, at least for the next year or two, no.
Good, thank you. All right, we'll go to you next, Caleb. Again, same question. Would you vote to raise Laramie water rates, noting that they're currently the highest in the surrounding area?
Caleb Hine, running for Ward 1. No, I would not. They keep going up, and no, I wouldn't.
Sorry, thanks, Caleb.
Yeah.
Again, next to you, Brian. Same question. Would you vote to raise water rates, noting that they're currently highest in the surrounding area?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. This is Brian Harrington, Ward 1. I would say in the next year or so, no, I would not. In the future, if it is deemed necessary to support our water system, then yes, I would, because if we don't, we push the problem further down the road, and then we see the thing we saw, in 2010 and 2011, where we were having hundreds of water line breaks a year that were going, mostly unfixed. So I think we can say, no, I'm not voting for a water increase, but you're really just pushing it onto future Laramie residents.
Good, thanks, Brian. Jane, I'll ask you the same question. Would you vote to raise Laramie water rates, recognizing that they're highest in the area?
So I'm not so sure they actually are the highest in the area. And if they are, there's reasons for that. And it has to do with our current infrastructure. So when your infrastructure is in trouble, you have to fix it, and it costs money. So for people to be concerned about that, I understand that. But if they want water through their faucets and to take a shower, we need to take care of the infrastructure. And if it requires us to raise our rates to maintain good infrastructure, which is all our city assets, our infrastructure are our assets, we need to do that. And if it's something we have to do, we have to do it. This is not a 30-second question. I mean, there's a lot more involved with our water rates. When you compare our water rates to other communities, you're not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing infrastructure to infrastructure. You're comparing years of taking care of the pipes and the water, and you're comparing communities who don't take care of the situation. I mean, for years, Laramie had really low water rates, and look what happened. We ended up in a mess where everything was breaking, and it was ridiculous. So we had to invest. It's part of the thing that you have to do. So it's a passionate issue for me, because all our utilities are in what's called an enterprise fund. So people think we're like, oh my God, the rates are so high and we're making all this money. And that's not the case. That doesn't happen. An enterprise fund means it's a break-even situation. Our costs, we cover our, and then we just divide, right? And if that's what we need to do, that's what we need to do. And it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. If Cheyenne's water rates are cheaper than Laramie's, then that's because they've taken better care of their infrastructure. So it's as simple as that.
All right, so Jane, I think we've opened a can of worms there. You did. I gave you the benefit of your banked previous time. So we will recognize that. But in fairness, you know, given that you did have extra time, I'm going to open the floor then to comments from other candidates if they would like to add something to their answers or comment on anything that's been said. So I'll just open it up to the other candidates. Before I go to you, Brett, well, why don't I do this first? Why don't I ask you, Brett, to answer the question, and then we will open it to comments to everyone else. So Brett, again, your answer to the question, would you vote to raise Laramie water rates? And recognizing that my assertion that they may be one of the highest in the surrounding area may be challenged.
Brett Glass, Ward 1. Well, the first thing we need to do is go back to the root cause. The reason why we have higher water rates is that we had neglected infrastructure. In particular, under a prior city manager, a fellow named Flip McConaughey, who is no longer with us. This is due to a flaw in really having a city manager form of government rather than an elected mayor. This person found that it was easiest to grease the skids by simply by not spending money on this. So I think that we can help this by moving to having an elected mayor. That being said, we should make sure that any increases in water rates don't go to improvements in other things, such as sewers, which are related to water but not entirely. We should invest in cathodic protection to try to preserve our existing infrastructure so we can spread the cost out. And when we do have to lay new pipe, we should make sure that it's of high quality. We have high quality plastic water mains in there. And I see I'm running out of time, so that's all I can say. We need to do the best we can under the circumstances.
So thanks, Brett. So I'm going to open this up in fairness to the rest of you, and we can, you know, we don't have to go through all of our questions. So this is an important question to the people of Laramie. So I'll open this to the floor if there are any comments or any additional, if people want to challenge what others have said, I'll open that up now. If not, then we'll go on to one more question. Caleb, you have a comment, so why don't we move to you, and then we'll just address anybody else's.
Thank you. Yeah, I would go off a little bit of what Brett Glass is saying. Again, this is Caleb with Ward 1. Let's go off a little bit of what Brett Glass was and Jane was saying. This is all due to that point of not addressing the infrastructure. I mean, infrastructure is exactly, it's all the city has to bargain with it. That's what they get businesses to come to town with. And we gotta look into why some water tastes different in different areas. That's a big thing. And then also, it comes back to the city manager. I think a mayor would be the best form of doing that, because if it's accountable to the public, and we are servants of the public. I think that'd be great. So that was my comment.
All right, so I'm going to give each of the other three candidates, if they wish, a moment to respond. So Andy, I'll go to you first.
Thank you, Rob. Andy Somerville, Ward 1. I just want to applaud my colleagues that have all brought, or the other candidates that have brought up the idea that this is complex. This is not simple. The city goes through a very significant audit every year to ensure that enterprise funds, so your water rates, are only spent for water projects. It's extraordinarily complex to meet those requirements. So I want to reassure the voters out there that the city is not diverting any of your water rate money to other projects outside of the water fund. And I think that to speak to whether we should have an increase next year, probably not, based on economic circumstances, but we have to realize that's just pushing those projects out. Water projects are planned many, many years in advance. There is some money to go out and fix breaks and do replacements. That's kind of part of the yearly budget, but for major infrastructure replacement, to try to get ahead of those breaks, those are 2, 3, 5, 7 years out that the city is budgeting, planning, and saving in the enterprise fund to pay for those. So you have to balance what people can afford, but also looking at our past and how it was dealt in the past. I don't want to ever put that burden on the future Laramie residents 30 years from now to clean up a mess because we didn't want to put money into water. And just, if you need a refresher on why that's important, look at all the cities that had problems with their water infrastructure. Flint, Michigan, look up in Pennsylvania, a number of them that just didn't put any money in it, and there was public health consequences, not just inconveniences to those. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Andy. And I misspoke. There are still 3 candidates left if they want to comment. So I think, Brian, you noted or raised your hand that you'd like to make a comment. So I'll just offer the floor to you.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. This is Brian Harrington. I wanted to comment a lot the same way that both Jane and Andy and Brett commented about this being an enterprise fund. So it's, it's not a money-making venture for the city. I think that's important. We've been hearing at council with the increase in public comments. This has been one of those things that has come up often. And, I think it's a little bit of misinformation. We did discuss it this last Tuesday night that we will be looking into it deeper for, and sort of sharing the math behind our calculations with the public. And then to the other candidate's point about water being different in different parts of town, that is another inaccuracy that's been brought up at council a few times. It's just not true. If you have bad water coming out of your faucet, it has to do with the connection from the tap from the city into your apartment. I've certainly lived in apartments in Laramie that had atrocious water. And sure enough, I moved a block and a half away, not the same problem. So I think that's just another important myth to bust here. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Mark and Brett, if either of you have comments, I'll ask you first, Mark. Were there any additional thoughts you had regarding this issue?
Mark Andrews, Ward 2. It's complicated in the sense that every resident sees a water bill and they will see an increase and make note of that. I can understand what all the other candidates are saying, but mismanagement of the past, I don't think is justification to harm the current residents. So if there's a way, and maybe there's not, but if there's a way to lessen that current residents to get things back up to a standard that should be here, again, this is not the year to look at that. Just in all the negative economical issues that are placed on households this last year.
Thanks, Mark. And Brett, last word to you if you choose to take it. I take it that's a no.
No, I squeezed everything I needed to say into the initial comment.
Good job. So thank you, everybody. That was the last question I think we'll ask tonight. And I'll remind you that these weren't my questions. These are questions that were sent to the League of Women Voters by residents and concerned citizens in Laramie and the area. So really appreciate your thoughtful comments tonight. In addressing these questions, and I applaud all of you on the thoughtful answers that you've brought to the floor. This hopefully is really informative to the voters. You've expressed a diverse range of opinions on certain topics. And between all of you, you've also illuminated a lot of the really complicated issues that go into city council deliberations. And I also just thank you for being willing to serve and if elected, being willing to be on council, because clearly with the questions we've had tonight, it's not an easy job. So thank you for that. So I'll turn the floor over to Nancy to finish the forum, and thank you again.
Yeah. I'm having the mute issue too. There we go. I want to thank you, Rob, for doing a nice job with the moderation again. And I have just a few reminders since it's getting late here. I'll try to keep this short. This is being recorded, as are our other forums. So please check out our YouTube channel and check out this forum as well as others to find out about our candidates so that you can be an informed voter. We do have recordings already up for the Laramie Fire District candidates and the, Laramie Fire and School Board were all last week. And then just yesterday, we did a forum for the County Commission candidates and the Clerk of District Court. And then upcoming next will be tomorrow night, Hospital Board of Trustees and Laramie Rivers Conservation District. And then the following week, we have 2 forums for our Wyoming House and Senate district candidates. We split those into 2 groups. The first night will be September 30. That will include Senate District 10 and Wyoming House Districts 13 and 46. And then the next night we have Wyoming House Districts 14, 45, and 47. So stay tuned there. And I remind you to check out the voter's guide. It's on our website and will be in the paper on October 11. And please do be sure to go out and vote. So now I'm going to do our screen share, and this will give you the information. If you want to have further conversations with the candidates, you can do so by contacting them. Oh, now we're all set here. Welcome to our virtual candidate forum. I'm Nancy Lockwood, co-president of the League of Women Voters of Laramie. We are pleased to co-sponsor this evening's forum with the Albany County Public Library. I'd like to extend my thanks to the library, and particularly to Rachel Crocker, director of the Albany County Public Library, for all the work she's done for tonight's forum. Tonight's forum is for our Laramie City Council Ward 3 candidates. We had an earlier forum for our other city council wards, and there was some miscommunication, and our Ward 3 candidates didn't get notified, so we have given them this opportunity to answer the same questions in the same format, and I think we'll try to link the 2 recordings together so that it'll all be under one YouTube video. There are 2 filed candidates and 1 write-in candidate running for the 1 open seat in Ward 3. We invited all 3 candidates to participate in this evening's forum. Klaus Hansen was unable to attend tonight, so we just have with us Pat Gabriel and our write-in candidate, Victoria Rasmussen Dixon. We are recording tonight's forum and we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel, League of Women Voters of Wyoming, within the next few days. Links to all the forum recordings can also be found on our website, and we are posting them on Vote 411's website. Laramie's public TV, Access TV station, Channel 191, will also air the forums, and our web addresses and links will be provided at the conclusion of the forum. The general election is Tuesday, November 3. Absentee voting has already begun. You can request an absentee ballot from your county clerk's office now through November 2. Your completed ballot needs to be returned to your county clerk's office such that it is received by November 3, 7 p.m. Of course, you can also vote at your polling place on the day of the election, and the polling places are open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You may also register or change your registration now through October 19 at your county clerk's office, and after October 19 through November 2, you can register or change your registration at the county clerk's office if you also cast an absentee ballot at the same time. You may also register or change your registration at your polling place on election day. If you have any special needs, voting accommodations and aids are available at each polling place and at the clerk's office. You can contact your clerk's office to arrange in advance for assistance, and the election judges can assist you at the polls. Polling places have been consolidated for this election due to COVID-19. There are 4 polling places within the city limits and 2 polling places outside the city limits. If you are a registered voter in Albany County, you should have received a postcard in the mail this summer if your polling place has changed due to the consolidation. You can also contact your county clerk's office or go to their website to find your polling place. On October 11, that's this coming Sunday, the Laramie Boomerang will publish the League's Voters Guide. The League will also post, or has also posted, the Voters Guide on their website, and there are copies available at the Albany County Public Library and the Albany County Clerk's Office, as well as other locations in town. If you are interested in knowing more about the League of Women Voters or in becoming a member, please visit our website and Facebook page, and we would love to have other members and assisting us. For this forum, our moderator will provide questions to our two candidates. The league has chosen questions from those provided to us by local citizens. The questions are specific to the office, not towards individual candidates. And the moderator will ask all candidates for a particular office the same questions. Questions were not provided to the candidates in advance of tonight's forum. Responses to the questions are limited to 90 seconds. Or no, in this case, they're limited to 75 seconds. That's because we had such a large number of city council candidates that when we had our first forum, we had chosen to try to limit the response time to allow for more questions. Candidates, we ask that you wait to begin your response until you are on speaker view and spotlighted, and that you mute yourself when not speaking. We also ask that you give your name when you are speaking. That's to help people who are listening to the forums and maybe not watching the actual video. The moderator will have the discretion to edit questions for clarity and appropriateness, to ask follow-up questions to help expand upon an issue, to cover unaddressed issues, and to elicit responses that will assist voters in distinguishing one candidate from another in relation to issues. All candidates will be given time to respond to any follow-up questions. The moderator may also vary the allowed response time based on the complexity of the question and overall time constraints of the forum. At the conclusion of the forum, we will display by screen share a list of the candidates here tonight and their contact information, so you can get in touch with them if you want further information. We will also display information for accessing the recorded forums and contact information for the League, the Albany County Public Library, and other governmental offices associated with the elections. And now I'm going to turn things over to our moderator tonight, Rod Godbee. Rob currently serves as the Associate Dean of the Haub School of Environmental and Natural Resources at the University of Wyoming. He is also the Deputy Director of the Center for Energy Regulation and Policy Analysis and an Associate Professor in the Economics Department at UW. Additionally, he serves as a Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative Faculty Fellow and as an adjunct faculty member with the MBA program at Pforzheim University in Germany. In addition to his academic duties, he was appointed to serve on the State of Wyoming's Consensus Revenue Estimating Group in 2019. His research areas include natural resources, energy and environmental economics, industrial organization and macroeconomic policy, and he is often interviewed by the national and international media on energy and macroeconomic issues. Outside of work, Rob enjoys being walked by his dogs. He's served as a moderator for our primary election forums, and we are pleased to have him return for the general election forums. So welcome, Rob.
Great, thanks, Nancy. So we're happy to be here tonight with two candidates who we will ask to introduce themselves shortly. And then we will go to the questions. So I will ask each of the candidates, if they can, to identify themselves first and the seat they're running for, and then to answer the question. And I'll ask each of our candidates to mute their microphones when they're not being addressed, just to avoid any feedback issues. All right, so we'll meet our candidates first tonight. So I'll start with Pat Gabriel. Then I will alternate questions between Pat and Victoria. So Pat, can you please identify yourself and the seat you're running for? And Pat, I believe you are on mute.
There we
There you
go. Pat Gabriel, Vice Mayor of the 9-member Laramie City Council. I have served on the school board, Albany County Commission. This is my first term as Laramie City Council member. It's been, and indeed, a lot of consternation here recently with the Laramie City Council, but it's been a pleasure to serve the last 3.5 years.
Thank you. And Victoria, if you could introduce yourself, and Pat, if you wouldn't mind muting your microphone. Great.
All right, I'm Victoria Rasmussen Dixon. I am a mother of 6 children and have a wonderful husband. I live here in Laramie. I grew up in Laramie for a good chunk of my life. And I am running for Laramie City Council Ward 3, and I'm excited about it. I love Laramie. I think it's a great city and a great place to live and raise your children.
Great, thank you, Victoria. So why don't we just dive in a little bit more, and I will alternate between the both of you. So I'll start with you next, Victoria. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about what motivates you to run in a little more detail and why you're especially suited for the office? And then Pat will come to you and ask you the same question. So Victoria, what motivates you to run and what makes you especially well suited for the office?
Well, I was motivated to run mainly because as I've been watching, like I said previously, I grew up here in Laramie, and as I've been watching how things have changed in Laramie, there's been a lot of changes that I personally don't feel have been great for our community, that have actually hurt us for bringing in some more businesses for economic development, amongst other things. The reason why I feel like I would be best suited for this is, like I said, I grew up here. Our family has a business here. We've owned a business in this community since 1972. I've worked alongside my parents in that business, and I've watched what decisions that the city council makes, how it has affected the local economic in our area. I've watched the lows and the highs happen, and I would just really like to be a part of the city council to help us to move forward in a more positive direction.
Great, thank you. And next we'll go to you, Pat. And again, Pat, what motivates you to run in a little more detail, and why are you especially well suited for the job?
Thank you, Rob. Once again, I would like to, I should have said this at the beginning, thank the Laramie League of Women Voters for accommodating our Ward 3 candidates. We had an issue earlier and we've resolved that, and so they made special accommodations for us. Rob, thanks for your service here tonight as being the moderator. That's a big help for all of us. After serving for 3.5 years at Laramie City Council, I think I've got a pretty good handle of things. We've been through some tough times with COVID. Some of the demonstrations have been issues for the Laramie City Council to deal with. I feel that I've been able to learn more about how the city functions. I think we have a great city manager. Her team around her is very well suited, lots of experience there. They guide the city council. We make the final decisions on many things, but we have really excellent guidance when it comes to administration. So I feel that we've had, in my term anyway, a successful 3.5 years, but some issues really to deal with when you come to some of the issues on sales tax that we're going to be looking at because of the COVID issues, lack of football games early. That's going to hurt some of the Laramie City Council. And so I think we have some issues ahead of us.
Time is up. Ms. Gabriel, time is up.
Great, thanks, Pat.
I was looking for some cards.
I was holding cards.
Questions, so we'll start with you, Pat. First, we'll start with some positives. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think are the top 3 strengths of the city, and how do you suggest we use these strengths to the benefit of Laramie?
I think our administration is one thing that really is very positive for Laramie. As I talked about, we have great leadership in our city manager, Janine Jordan. Her staff has lots of experience. We've had excellent experience on our city council. People like our mayor, Joe Shumway, has been on council now for a number of years, going back into the early 2000s. I think his leadership has been very special for the city. When you go to the Laramie Police Chief, Laramie Fire Chief, Dan Johnson, Laramie Police Chief, Dale Stalder has over 40 years experience. I think those things really are important and make a big difference in the way the city is run. So those are a couple of things that come to mind. I think that we have a lot of great citizens in Laramie that support what we're trying to do. I don't think it's always, the real positive from city council standpoint. But over the years that I've been on, the 3.5+ years on city council, we've had pretty good success in support from the members of the community and what we're trying to obtain, and also our relationship with the University of Wyoming.
Time is up. Sorry, Pat, I guess I'm not showing you you're not seeing visiting cards. Do you have me up there on your screen?
I do not.
Can you find the video shot of me?
I'll just make my answer shorter. How's that?
Okay, Pat, I'm just going to stand up and show you across the room as well, okay? So go ahead.
That sounds good. I'm done.
Great, thanks, Pat. So I'll go to you next, Victoria. So again, same question. What are the top 3 strengths you see in the city of Laramie? And how would you suggest using those strengths to the benefit of the city?
Okay, so, Pat actually has touched on a lot of really good points. I would agree that our local police department is wonderful. We have a great local police department. I believe that our police do a really good job, as well as the local fire department. From the early 90s to now, it's quite impressive to see where we are at with our local fire department, how much it has grown, and all the fire stations that we have around our city to keep everybody safe. So those are a couple ones that I would definitely agree that are very positive for our community. They help to keep us safe and everything. The other one that I really am impressed with is the parks and service, actually. As I drive around and I go to the different parks around our city, the ones in West Laramie and the ones in the city of Laramie, I am very impressed on how clean and neat and orderly they are, including just going around like downtown, seeing how a lot of the stuff, all the garbage and everything's always been cleaned up. It's nice, and they do a very good job. And I definitely think that is some positive things for our city. It sure makes it more inviting when we have people come to visit our city, especially for football games and everything else. So I guess that's where I'm at with it.
Great, thank you. So those were the positives that we have. So I'll start with you, Pat, and ask you a little tougher question. So what are the most pressing issues facing our community, and how would you suggest addressing them? We'll go to specific topics a little later on, but generally speaking, what do you see are the most pressing issues facing the community, and how will you address them?
I think we have to take a look at our sales tax revenue that supports many of our city functions like streets and the sewer and garbage pickup and all of these other things. They are very important functions to the city, and many of those are, of course, enterprise funds which support themselves. But then you have to take a look at all of the other functions that city council is involved with when you're talking about police, fire, first responders. Many of those functions rely on sales tax money. And so I think we have to be very careful on how we have to spend money this coming year. And I would say another thing that we want to really avoid is having any kind of layoffs with our city staff, because we are at really a small fraction right now of staff, and we want to keep them.
Great, thank you. So next I'll turn to you, Victoria. And again, same question. What do you see are the most pressing issues facing the community, and how will you address them?
Wow. I think one of the biggest and most pressing, most pressing issues facing our community is our economic development. and also our affordable housing. Those are two very big areas, and both of those affect your city all in all. As far as how I plan to address them, you know, I would love to sit down and look at the plan that they have and speak with them and talk with them and figure out why they have put in the restrictions that they have on the economic development. There are so many restrictions, it makes it very difficult for our current business owners and even future business owners to be able to build a business or grow their business, and that hurts us. Also, I'd like to sit and talk with the land development people to figure out why we are putting these restrictions in that we're putting in for the affordable housing development. You know, like the one that I'm thinking of, for instance, is this affordable housing development that's been brought to the city council that is all about Bill Nye Street. And I'd like to know why they keep trying to put a stop to that and why they're asking him to develop so much stuff with it. So those are, I guess, two of my really big areas.
Great, thank you. So we'll be coming back to, I think, a few of the ideas that both of you have brought up. So let's turn to COVID policy right now. So I'll start with you, Victoria, first, and then go to Pat. What would you, I should say, would you support a citywide policy, say similar to Jackson's, that requires all citizens, including UW students, to wear masks in public, as well as in public spaces at all times? Why or why not?
All right, so first I'd like to just point out that my internet is being a bit unstable, so some of the stuff that you've been saying to me has been getting cut off. So I'm hoping I'm catching everything. I believe your question was about masks. My feelings on masks are, I don't think it's very fair to mandate and tell people that they have to wear a mask. I believe that we're all adults, and the adults that have children, they're the parents of those children, and they should have that right to be able to decide whether or not they should wear masks and if their children should wear masks. I know that I read on a classifieds post that there was this young lady who, for medical reasons, cannot wear masks because of things that have happened to her in the past. And we need to take that in consideration. We need to think about people who have been through very horrific things in their life, and wearing a mask, what it could do to them. I mean, I understand that there is a disease out there that, you know, people can get sick from this, but I think we all need to be smart and be responsible for ourselves.
Great, thank you. So I'll turn to you now, Pat. And Pat, same question. Would you support a citywide policy, say similar to Jackson's, requiring all citizens, including UW students, to wear masks in public and in public spaces at all times? Why or why not?
I tend to agree with what a lot of the stuff that Victoria had to say about it. I was one of the 5 that voted not to ask the county health officer to require masks be worn in the city. That comes from the county, that goes to the state health officer. And we had a discussion about that in the summer months. And so we felt that having the county health officer before Laramie City Council would be the proper thing to do. We had a lot of discussion, and we decided as a city council, it was really on a 5-4 vote, not in the best interest to have the council mandate that. So the county health officer never did go to the state to ask for a mask requirement. So that's where I stand right now. I think a lot of the businesses around town, the university require it. And if they do, then you have to adhere to that. But from a city standpoint, I'm not in agreement.
Great, thank you, Pat. So we'll carry on with one more COVID question. In this case, I'll start with you, Pat. What types of punishments would you endorse for persons or business owners who don't follow those COVID-19 orders that have been instituted?
That's a good question. I think that people need to adhere to what the state has to say. They are the experts when it comes to COVID. They know the best practices. On the other hand, A local business might have a little different idea. I think you need to get together and work out the details. And if the state says that you need to be doing something for the interest of the customers, then I think the business must follow that. Hopefully with maybe a little bit of give and take on both sides. But I think that if the state comes down with a mandate, then it's in the best interest of all to adhere to that.
Great, thanks, Pat. Victoria, I'll turn to you and ask you the same question. So what types of punishments would you endorse for persons or business owners who don't follow current COVID-19 orders?
Well, it goes back to what I just said. I feel like that we as adults need to be able to make those decisions on our own. And even the business owners, if a business owner feels like that they need to make sure that masks are mandatory to come into their business, I think that's great. If they feel like that's best, then they need to be able to do that. But I also feel like that if a business owner does not feel like they need to have that, then they need to be able to have that right to make that decision. I don't feel like that it should be up to all of us to tell them how they can and cannot run their business. Again, it just goes back to being an adult and being responsible for yourself and making sure you have all the information, you've been informed on everything, and making an educated decision on it.
Good, thank you. So I'll start with you next, Victoria, and we'll talk about some recent governance issues, at least two that have come up recently as issues. So the first question is, do you support the First Amendment? And if so, do you consider the lottery system that City Council has currently implemented an impedance to the right of redress, that is, to your right to freedom of speech?
Okay, yes, I do support the First Amendment. I do believe that we should have the freedom of speech. I also do believe that we should be allowed to go into the City Council chambers and let them know how we feel. But that being said, I also feel like there needs to be security protocols in place so that if somebody is in there giving them, their feelings on something, they cannot just come in and get interrupted by a group of people. I do feel that though the group of people have their right to let their voices be heard and be known, we need to be respectful of everybody at the same time.
Great, thank you. And Pat, I'll ask you the same question. Do you support the First Amendment, specifically the freedom of speech? And if so, do you consider the lottery system that City Council has currently implemented an impedance to that right?
Absolutely. On the First Amendment, we have a limited amount of time during our session. And so we decided that the same people were getting to speak during that 30-minute public comment period at the beginning of our City Council meeting. And so in order to have a fair system, we decided that we would set up this lottery system where other people will have an opportunity to speak before we get into our regular agenda. It just seemed like everybody, the same type of people or the same topics were getting demanded at the very beginning, and other people that wanted to speak did not have an opportunity. And so we wanted to implement some kind of fair system. I think we're kind of looking at it as we go, and it certainly can be adjusted as we go down the road.
Great, thanks, Pat. And I apologize for my dogs in the background. Someone has clearly come home, probably for dinner. So I'll ask you a second question, and I'll start with you, Pat. And this has come up in a number of other cities around the state. Would you support an elected mayor rather than the current city manager form of government in Laramie? Why or why not?
Oh, that issue would be decided by the voters. If the voters deemed it prudent to do that, I would certainly. I think we have a pretty good system right now with the city manager form of government. We have a 9-member city council. We oversee the operations of the city. They come to us with a number of different things. And I think our system right now works pretty well. But if there was a petition signed by a number of voters that went to the public and they said we would like a mirror form of government, I would certainly support that.
Thank you. Okay, and I'll turn to you now, Victoria, and ask the same question. Would you support an elected mayor rather than the current city manager form of government in Laramie? Why or why not?
You know, it's hard for me to answer that question because I really don't know all the details, all the ins and outs of it, but this is what I can tell you. For a short while in my life, I did live up in northern Wyoming, and in the city, well, town of Byron, the mayor there is actually an elected mayor. And watching how that all took place and everything was very fascinating and interesting. And then coming back to Laramie and seeing how our mayor is just appointed was interesting as well. I believe that there's goods and bads to both directions. As far as whether I could say one way is better than the other, I honestly could not give you an honest answer on it. I would be willing to listen to the public and hear what everybody else has to say, take that in consideration, and then, you know, converse with the rest of the city council members. And then if the public as a majority would like that, then I would say, sure, let's look at it. But if they would not, then I would say, well, let's look at the other direction, the way we've been doing it.
Great, thank you. So for the rest of the debate, and we've covered most of the questions that have been covered in the previous debates. We only have a few left. With so few candidates this time around, it's much shorter. But I'll ask you 3 policy questions at least. We'll start first with you, Victoria, on a general one. Given the recent downturn statewide and the decline in state revenues, that's probably going to lead to a decline in state funding of city government. How do you believe local government should deal with the revenue declines due to this downturn? And what would be reasonable reactions either to increase revenues or how would you change services?
Okay, you know, to start off with, the first thing I would do is definitely do an audit. And I would really go through how our existing programs are being paid, where the money is going, and just comb through it really closely with a fine-tooth comb. See what we need to do, what changes we need to do within the city budget already that we currently have to be able to handle the downfall. I know that there are some areas where that perhaps money is being spent too much in one area and perhaps not enough in another area. And so most definitely start with an audit and then just fine-tooth comb it and go from there.
Great, thank you. So I'll turn to you, Pat, and ask you the same question. You made some earlier comments in this direction, so you can expand on those if you like, or you can talk about other things. How should local government in Laramie deal with the revenue declines due to the economic downturn, and what would be your preferred methods of dealing with it?
We've seen a number of state agencies. We've seen the University of Wyoming going through this process. The city is going to be faced with this. We only really did a one-year budget this year. We normally do 2, a biennium, but because of the uncertainty, we've only funded 1 year right now. And so we're going to have to be look at it, as Victoria talked about, very carefully on a lot of different programs. We're going to have to be limited on some, and it's going to be something that the city council is going to have to rely on the experience that we have in finance and the city manager's position to really guide us and make recommendations that's going to keep the city whole.
Great, thank you. So we'll start with you now on this one, Pat. A couple parts to this question. So the first part of the question is define what you think affordable housing should mean, in your opinion. Then answer, do you think Laramie has an adequate supply of housing for all income levels by your definition? And if not, what would you do to address this issue? So what is your definition of affordable housing? Do we have an adequate supply of housing for all income levels in this city currently? And if not, what would you do to address it?
Well, first off, we don't have adequate housing. We've seen a study recently that said that city has really struggled in that area. A lot of different people have different values when you look at affordable housing. I think some of the housing that we've looked at south of Walmart, they say is affordable housing, but some of those prices out there, in my mind, are not affordable at all. I think the city really needs to continue. I was one of the ones that voted to work out some kind of system with the developer on the Spring Creek project because there was a number of housing units being developed there. I was voted down along with Jessica Stalder, as Victoria talked about earlier in our presentations about housing. I think we should work with developers as much as we can because the city is certainly in need of more affordable housing.
Great, thanks, Pat. So I'll turn to you, Victoria, and you've already identified this as an important issue to you, so you can expand on this. So first, define what you think affordable housing should mean. Then answer, does Laramie have an adequate supply, in your opinion, for all income levels? And if not, if you can expand on what you do to address that situation.
Okay, so no, I don't believe Laramie has enough affordable housing for all income levels at all. I do believe that we definitely need to work on that. We definitely need to come up with a very good strategic plan where a builder can come in and build affordable housing that is good for all income levels. You know, for a good example, you compare an apple to apple, a home that we had up in northern Wyoming, that was a 3,600 square foot home, and it was large, it was nice. For what it sold there was like crazy how much it sold there versus here. If we were to buy that home here, it would be up in the $500,000, $600,000 price range. That's not affordable for a lot of people. I know that there are people in our community that can afford that, but there's also people in our community that cannot. I think Pat brought up a lot of good points. I mean, what Pat said as far as him and Jessica Stalder being the ones that did vote for the Spring Creek housing, I would actually love to sit down and visit with both him and Jessica and just even see if we could come up with some sort of strategic plan that would help everybody.
Great, thanks, Victoria. And I'm actually going to expand on this question a little bit more because both of you have said that you believe that we don't have enough adequate housing. So I'll just ask you on that first part of the question, and I'll start with you, Victoria, then quickly to Pat. So this doesn't have to be a full 75-second answer. So Victoria, what do you actually think affordable housing is? Can you just define that for us?
You know, affordable housing, honestly, I believe is something where you can come into the home less than $300,000. And I know that some people may think that's crazy. Oh, you can't even do that anymore anywhere. But we have a cousin who lives in Dallas, Texas, that lives in a very beautiful area of Dallas, Texas. We went and saw her home and she told me she only purchased it for $350,000, given that's over the mark where I just said. But still, for that home, a fully brick home that was a 4 bedroom, 3.5 bath for $350,000, that's a really good deal. But yeah, I believe that if we had homes in our market area that were below the 300,000, in the hundreds to 200,000 area, I believe that would be affordable housing, and that would actually help a lot of people in this area, a lot of people in all income levels.
Great, thanks, Victoria. And then I'll bounce back to you, Pat. So in your opinion, how would you define affordable housing, just to be specific, given that you argue that we need more adequate and affordable housing?
Knowing some of the wages that are available here in Albany County. I really think that Victoria's really touched upon it below 300, probably 225 to 250 in that area. I know developers are trying to make housing, it seems like it's really difficult here in Laramie and Albany County, because she's talked about it, and I know some people that around the country would really enjoy buying a house here for what they've paid elsewhere, because sometimes the housing is not quite twice as much here as opposed to elsewhere, but maybe 1.5 times. It's very expensive. I think we need to work with the developers as much as we can on city council to bring affordable housing in, because the study says we definitely need it.
Great, thanks, Pat. All right, a little different question. Again, a policy issue that's important to a lot of voters in Laramie. So I'll start with you, Pat. Would you vote to raise Laramie's water rates that some would argue are currently the highest in the surrounding area? Why or why not? And if you want to expand on what some of the issues are, we'll take those, and I'll give you as long as you need to answer this.
I'm sorry, Rob, you broke up right at the end. You were having a little bit of audio problem. Could you just repeat the question again, please?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So would you vote to raise Laramie's water rates that some would argue are currently the highest in the surrounding area? Explain your answer, and if you need to, you can explain some of the background that you would consider in that, and I'll give you as much time as you need for your answer.
Well, the water rates are an enterprise fund, and so the city cannot go into a deficit in support of our water system. We have to make sure that we're not deficit spending there. And so over the years, I know Laramie fell behind back in the early 2000s, where they didn't do anything with infrastructure, and they brought in a consultant, and the consultant told us that we needed to upgrade our system and raise the water rates so we could support a viable water system. And so it's taken the city of Laramie a number of years to get back up. I can remember a number of times where the city manager would come to council and said, we had over 125 water breaks, you know, in a period of time, which is just incomprehensible, really. And so I think city council is on pretty good ground right now. I don't see any future possibility of raising rates. I think we're in a good situation because we've planned in the past and brought our water system up to pretty good standards.
Great, thanks, Pat. So Victoria, I'll turn to you and ask you the same question. Would you vote to raise Laramie's water rates that are currently, in some people's minds, highest in the surrounding area? Explain your answer, and if you would like, some of the issues that you'd think about in considering this question.
So, you know, my first response to it would be no, I would not vote to raise the rates. But that's also coming from an uneducated response, being that I don't know everything about it. I haven't sat on the council. I haven't looked at all the paperwork. I haven't done all the research. I don't feel I could actually give a good answer on that, an educated answer on that. I, of course, first, like I said, I lean towards the no, don't raise the rates. We don't need to fork out any more money. We don't need to pull any more money out of people's pocketbooks. But, you know, if there is truly having what Pat just said, where the city manager came to him and talked about all the water lines breaking, how many of them he said, you know, if we really have that kind of stuff happening and our infrastructure, you know, with our water lines are old and corroded and they're needing to be replaced and all of that, maybe we do need to look at raising the water rates. But just to clarify, I'm not saying yes to that, but nor am I saying no to that. What I'm saying is I feel like I need to be more educated on that before I could make a decision on that. And I would be willing to do the research and learn about it and know about it. So I am making the best choice for our community and for our citizens.
Great, thanks, Victoria. So we have actually covered the questions that the other candidates addressed. We could go, it's up to Nancy, I suppose, if she likes, we could cover, and if you're willing, we could cover some additional questions. But given the other debate had a significantly larger number of candidates, it took quite a bit longer to work through these questions. So if you're willing, if both of you are willing, I could ask you a couple more questions just about general policy issues in the city. Is that okay? And if you can just signify with a thumbs up or.
I'm fine with that. I can't promise you that I'll have all the answers to everything because I don't know everything yet, but I mean, I'm willing. For me, it's also very educational doing this. I love listening to Pat and what Pat has to say. It helps me a lot. So I'm fine with that if Pat's okay with that.
All right. So we will we'll take a couple new ones, I hope. Pat, are you okay with that?
I am. Let's go.
Okay, well, let me ask another question that's been around for a little bit now. There's been recent concern about police around the country. So what powers or functions should the new Laramie Police Department Citizens Review Board have? And I'll start with you, Victoria.
Okay, my screen froze. Are you guys still there? Okay, could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
I'd be glad to repeat the question. So policing has become a major issue nationally. What powers and functions should the new Laramie Police Department Citizens Review Board have?
All right, so first of all, I believe the City Council is the review board for the police department, or they should be the review board for the police department. As far as the power over the police department, I just think that needs to go to our city council. Our city council, we need to work hand in hand with our police department. We need to work with our police chief. We need to look at what is going to be the best all as a whole for our police department. There might be some areas that our police department needs some more training. You know, let's face it, the world has changed. It's not as nice as it used to be. It's becoming worse and worse. And I'm sure that there are some areas that our police department, our officers need to be more trained in and be more educated in. And that is one area that I think that we should definitely look at moving some funding towards so that our police are completely equipped and ready for anything that could come to them, especially with as scary as the world is becoming.
Thanks, Victoria. So I'll turn to you next, Pat, and ask you the same question. What powers and functions should a new Laramie Police Department Citizens Review Board have? And if you could just explain your answer.
Right now, we are taking a look at forming that through the city manager, the police chief, and with these recent demonstrations over the summer, we had a group of Laramie citizens come to the city council asking us for a citizens advisory board, review board, if you want to call it. I think that we have a tremendous police chief in Dale Stalder. We have a outstanding police force, first responders, lots of experience there. I have the top-notch respect for all of those people. And I think that the chief has even talked about perhaps on some of the calls that we need to have a mental health specialist, because not all of his people are trained in some of those areas that he feels they need to be trained in. And so I think this is going to be a positive for the city to have this review board. It's still in the formative stages at this point, but I look forward to seeing a better advisory board and police department.
Great, thanks, Pat. So a little bit broader question, maybe a little less controversial. We'll start with you, Pat, first. How would you make Laramie safer for bicycle and pedestrian travel, or does anything additional need to be done?
There needs to be a lot done, but financial, I'm not sure if we can afford to do it. There's a big financial output of trying to do that. I ride a bike all the time, and even when you have bike lanes, if the road on the right side isn't very good, it's kind of tenuous at best to try and maneuver your way around some of the rough roads. But I would certainly like to see, we've got some great bicycle trails out north of town now, all the way from 15th to 30th that the city has put in place. All of the different greenbelt areas that we're trying to develop. We've had great success over the years on that. I think it's just it's a process that we have to continue working on. But I think that especially with the student population at UW, that we need to have a first-class bicycle area in town.
Great, thanks, Pat. And I'll turn next to you, Victoria, and ask you the same question. How would you make Laramie safer for bicycle and pedestrian travel?
So I would agree with Pat that we definitely need to look at making it safer. You know, there was an idea thrown out, gosh, I can't remember if it was a year ago or how long ago it was, but they threw out the idea for especially the downtown district, because the downtown district is very tight and very difficult to ride your bikes around. But they threw out the idea of perhaps turning the alleyways into a great bicycle path. I thought that was kind of a cool idea. Alleyways are actually kind of cool to go down, especially with all the painting they're doing now. But that being said, that would mean that the city would also have to start focusing a lot harder on keeping the alleyways safe to drive down, meaning no more potholes, and the alleyways are pretty broke up. You know, outside of that, like Pat said, the Greenbelt, it is an amazing thing. Even the routes, like he said, north of town, I was just on one of them earlier today. I am also a person who rides my bike quite a bit, and I do agree that we need to do something, but how we need to go about doing it, I'm not sure. It's a lot of funding. It would take a lot of funding, and right now funding is something that we're tight on. And so, you know, yeah, that's definitely something we need to discuss.
Great, thank you. Another policy that's come up recently, and we'll start with you, Victoria. So I'll ask you this: what is the City Council's role in achieving carbon neutrality by 2050, as directed by the Council Resolution 2020-14 that was adopted March 3rd this year? So what is City Council's role in actually achieving that carbon neutrality?
Well, I can honestly tell you that I am not sure. I don't have an answer for you on that. I am willing to do the research and learn about it and know. I know a lot of the stuff that has been happening with that is more at a county level and not so much at a city level. But I don't really have an answer for it. I do know that we need to look at, when we're looking at it as a city and putting funds towards it, we need to look at the entire life cycle of it. For instance, the windmills. When the windmills are no longer working, what do we do with them? Because the blades and stuff can't be recycled. So what are we going to do with that? So we need to take all of that into consideration. But that's about as much as I can tell you about that.
Okay, thanks. So I'll turn to you, Pat, and just ask you the same question. What is City Council's role in achieving carbon neutrality by 2050 as directed by the Council Resolution that was passed on March 3rd, 2020? So what is the city's role in achieving that in your mind?
We've had great success so far getting some grants from Rocky Mountain Power to put some solar panels on the Ice Center and the Rec Center. We have a contract with a brand new firm that's going to build a solar farm out south of town, south of Mountain Cement. That's going to provide a great asset to Laramie and Albany County, and not only developing solar, but storage as well. So City Council has deemed that a high priority, and they are supporting it. It's 9-0 every time we vote on something that looks at carbon neutrality. The city has a contract with a major energy company to take a look at all of our city buildings to see how we can better utilize our energy. And so I think we're on the right track there, looking forward especially to that solar farm south of town.
Great, thanks, Pat. And this will be our last question, a short one, but it could be complicated. So I'll ask you first. Do you believe that tenants' rights are adequately protected in Laramie? Why or why not? Explain your answer.
Tenant rights. That is, that's a question I know that came before the City Council when I first came on. I know that there are statutes, state statutes in place that protect tenants. And so I know City Council discussed that, perhaps even maybe going a little bit further. But we were advised by some of the legal staff that we have state statutes, but the city could have implemented something maybe a little more rigorous. I was not in favor of that. I think that what we have in place is adequate, and certainly, you know, we had a number of people in the community come before us and said that if we don't have very good properties, then people aren't going to rent from us. They're going to go elsewhere. And so they want to make sure that they have very good rental property, and they're going to try and keep it up to the best of the ability.
Thanks, Pat. So I'll turn to you, Victoria, for our last question. So do you believe that tenants' rights are adequately protected in Laramie? Why or why not? And if you could just explain a little bit more.
You know, this goes back to the affordable housing in one form of it. I don't know that their rights are adequately protected. I know that there are some landlords out there in our city that a lot of people refer to them as slumlords. And I think that we need to possibly re-look at the whole thing again, revisit it again, and with Laramie growing the way that it is, maybe look at putting in some different restrictions, some different ways to help those tenants, to protect them. Now, that being said, I'm not saying that we need to get really harsh and make it unbearable and difficult for anybody to have rental properties. But I also think it's only fair to also keep people safe when they are renting a property. That's for both sides, though.
Thanks, Victoria. So those are all the questions we have tonight that were submitted to the league. I really want to thank both of you for running. It's really important, and I'm thankful we have people like the both of you that are willing to serve and stand for election. And so thank you for that, and best of luck in the election. And now I'll turn it back over to Nancy for a few last words.
Can we say one last word, each of us?
I'm okay with that, Rob. If you want to let them, since we've got some time, they can do a final little statement.
Sure. Well, sure. That would be a first. We haven't been doing that, but so we started with you, Victoria. So I will ask Pat first for a final statement, then you'll get to go last. So Pat, do you have any final last words for the debate?
Thank you. You bet. Thank you, Rob, for your participation tonight, your excellent questions. And thanks to the League of Women Voters. Thanks, Victoria. We're sorry that Klaus couldn't be here tonight, but I want to thank everybody for accommodating the Ward 3 candidates, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. And Victoria?
Okay, well, Pat basically said the exact same thing I was going to say. Thank you, League of Women Voters. Thank you, Rob. And thank you, Pat. I actually really enjoyed this a lot. I do feel bad that Klaus was not here. I feel like I learned a lot, and I enjoyed being able to hear what Pat had to say. Thank you, and thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Great, thank you. And now we'll turn it back over to Nancy for some last words.
Well, thank you, Rob, for doing this one more time for us. Maybe we'll see you back in our next election cycle in 2 years as we do it. And hopefully we will not be doing virtual forums at that point. We'll be back in person. I think that's a really nice format when we have the audience members there submitting the questions right there, and able to be up close with the candidates and talk with them afterwards. Just a few reminders here that the YouTube recordings are being posted, so you can get on our YouTube channel and look at the forums from all the other elections. This was our very last one for the general election. And also a reminder to look at the voter guide that will be published on October 11 by the Boomerang, and the advanced copies are already out there and posted on our website. And a reminder to everyone to please get out there and vote. And now I'll do the screen share that has the contact information, leave that up for a little bit, and then we'll conclude with leaving the meeting. So thank you.
And we'd like to thank the candidates for running for office too.
Definitely. Oops, that's a little small. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
And that concludes our forum for tonight.
Well, thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Rob.
All right, take care.
Bye.